For those of you who don't know me, I have the pleasure of being the Margaret and Terry Stent Director of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, which includes the wonderful Renwick Gallery. I'm Stephanie Stebich, and believe it or not, I'm hitting my 6-year mark here. I can hardly believe it. Time flies when there's a pandemic in between. So I would like to do 3 things ever so briefly. I would like to welcome you and talk about place. I want to talk briefly about the importance of American crafts in contemporary society, and it is my delight to express gratitude to our many sponsors. So first of all, do you realize that we have 1,200 people registered today, sold out, and the program is both live streamed and archived. So if you missed something, you can watch it later in your pajamas at home and revisit the magic that I know will happen here today. You are in the gorgeous high-tech McAvoy Auditorium in the Smithsonian American Art Museum, which sits in the old patent office, the 3rd federal building, built in Washington, D.C., to house inventions, creativity, things that would forever change our lives. So when you submitted a patent, I think then and maybe even now, you had to make a little model, a working model. And to inspire others, those models were put on display and people would come by, 100,000 or so people in the 19th century, and make a better mousetrap, as they say, come up with something new to design. And so I think this building has kind of a fitting past for an art museum to inspire people, to create a sense of awe and wonder, and of course, celebrate American ingenuity. I also want to acknowledge where we sit, just physically. We sit at a place that has been important to the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here, and the Native communities who have claimed this as their ancestral homeland. And also I want to recognize the labor of the enslaved people who were instrumental in constructing this historic building. So just sort of a land acknowledgement. And for those people who are at home, think also a little bit about where you sit and who came before you. So I want to talk to you ever so briefly about Crafting a Better Future, the Renwick 50th Anniversary Symposium. First of all, I have to confess, I just love the title of this exhibition, Crafting a Better Future. I keep threatening to the curators, all our exhibitions will be titled Crafting a Better Future. I think that's an important role for our museums, is to, with artists, imagine a better future. So in the spirit of the future, I logged online, as I'm sure you did this morning, to ChatGPT, the new artificial intelligence online system, and I said, help me out a little bit. What is the importance of American crafts to contemporary society? In sonnet form. Let me know what you think. Amidst the hustle of modernity's pace, where mass production reigns and dominates, American crafts still hold a precious place, for they reflect our heritage and traits. The artistry that's born from skilled hands, crafted with care and keen attention paid, embodies the spirit of our great lands and honors traditions of bygone days. From handmade quilts to intricate woodwork, each piece tells a story, a history, a unique perspective of those who worked to create beauty and lasting beauty. Let us cherish these crafts, both old and new, for they remind us of who we are true. Not bad. Not bad. Okay, obviously the machine has more to learn, and hopefully hearing from these super talented artists will make such artificial intelligence tools even smarter. It is my pleasure always to thank the many people who are behind the scenes to make this program a success. I begin with our staff. So obviously Gloria Kenyon is our fabulous public programs manager. And then, of course, we have 3 fabulous curators in Mary Savig, Nora Atkinson, and Anya Montiel, who've masterminded this fabulous 50th anniversary exhibition for the Renwick, and they did it during a pandemic. and I love the artists. Again, I had a great mentor who used to say, if you don't support the artists, they won't be there. So we have to keep supporting artists in every which way, and I think hearing from them is always inspiring, and I know that this is a very curious audience, so I hope you've got some great questions to engage them. And then I want to thank our supporters, our donors who believe like we do in the importance of the extraordinary creativity of American artists. So our sponsor for today's program is a dear friend of mine. It's Dorothy Saxe, San Francisco collector in honor of her husband, George Saxe. And a very important organization here is the Smithsonian Women's Committee. We made application, and they thought this was a worthy project to fund. We also have a special symposium media sponsor, the American Craft Council. And for those of you who are here in person and online, you can receive free entrance to the Baltimore American Craft Made Marketplace, taking place this weekend, March 3rd to 5th, at the Baltimore Convention Center, with a ticket code, I don't know how to make it fun, RENACC23. So use this ticket code. You can get a free entrance using RENACC23. You can ask somebody else, they'll have the same information as I do. So that is my duty today, simply to tell you how thrilled I am that we have this moment of conversation, that we are together, and that we continue to offer these hybrid programs so that we can talk across the country, that we can engage people who simply couldn't be with us physically this afternoon. And much as I would like to be with you for every minute of today's program, other work calls me away, so I'll be one of those people in my pajamas watching later too. So again, make yourself comfortable. It's going to be a wild and woolly afternoon. We do envision breaks and such, and now is my distinct pleasure to introduce the brilliant Nora Atkinson, who serves as the Fleur and Charles Bresler Curator-in-Charge of the Renwick Gallery. Thank you, Nora.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie, for that. I'm actually really amused because I had a small paragraph about AI that I was going to just cut from what I'm talking about, and here you've introduced it so beautifully. But thank you, everyone, for what promises to be an incredible, engaging afternoon. I always most love hearing from artists, and so we have quite a few of those here today to speak with us. We have so many, in fact, that I am not going to introduce them all this time by name, but I invite you to look in your programs where you can find the order of the speakers and a bio for each one in the printed program, or for those of you who are joining online, you can find those in information about the program with bios in the chat below the video player. We also welcome and encourage participation in the Q&A segments of the program today. If you have questions you'd like to ask, please use the comment cards that are here in the auditorium or the chat box online to ask any questions of today's speakers. And as always, please take a moment now to silence your cell phones if you haven't done so already. Always the first note of the day. So if you are like me, you have been fascinated over the past few months with the rise of AI engines like ChatGPT and Midjourney. As a craft curator, this moment of AI reckoning gives me pause again to reflect on what I do and the unique gifts that craft offers the world. In fact, I think I've probably been the one querying it over and over again, challenging it to come up with such a brilliant sonnet as you do. When an AI chatbot gives a response, it's literally giving predictive text or a similar amalgamation if you're looking at images based on its programming. And sometimes the results are astounding and remarkably convincing, as may be human. But the more I see it, I start to get this insistent feeling there's something missing. And I think it boils down to this. The machine is communicating, but it has no purpose to communicate. And that's what the artists here today offer. They're communicators and ambassadors with a purpose. Over the past year, the Renwick Gallery has celebrated its 50th anniversary as our nation's craft museum and has looked to the future. In doing so, we've used artists as our guide. Artists play an essential role in our world, daring us to dream, imagining a better future, and urging us to make it a reality. Craft today is thriving in America, though it looks very different than it did 50 years ago when the Renwick was founded. American craft today is not only about fitting into the hallowed halls of art, as proponents of the studio craft movement so loftily aimed, but about protective masks, protest banners, humble mugs from which we drink our coffee each morning. Craft is about the connective tissue between us and an engagement with our world, whether in the passing of traditions to new generations or the personal experience of making. It's profoundly human, and perhaps that's what makes it so alive and so beautifully appropriate to this contemporary moment, to orienting us to a better future in which old barriers of access have been questioned and torn down. With that in mind, we're turning over our symposium to an extraordinary cast of artists who have posed new questions about who we are, where we're from, and where we're going. The artists of today's symposium have been invited to focus on two truths of craft, its timeliness and its thingness. In the first group of talks today, we focus on artists materializing the elasticity of time. The work of Virgil Ortiz, Alicia Eggert, Einar and Hammock Stilatore, and Jiha Moon evades and confronts linear time as we understand it. They resist clearly defined beginnings, middles, and ends, showing us alternate perceptions. In the second group of artist talks we'll be seeing today, we're getting back to the basics. Each artist illustrates how humble materials make stories that really do matter. For example, a story that begins with a sweetgrass basket promises a different ending than stories that begin with weapons of war. These stories produce a more empathetic, resilient, resourceful, and collaborative worldview that will benefit our future and the earth. Here we'll highlight artists Sonya Clark, Corey Alston, Susie Ganch, Carla Hemlock, and Margarita Cabrera. I would also, with Stephanie, like to express my gratitude to our wonderful colleagues from across the Smithsonian, Anya Montiel, who used to be with us at Smithsonian American Art Museum here, and Diana and Jai for moderating the panels today. I want to thank the programs team, Gloria Kenyon, for organizing today's event, and also my curatorial partner, Mary Savig, who's not speaking today, but is here in spirit. And to add a little bit of tone to today's presentation, I'd like to read a quote that she highlighted for this morning. In July 1977, Jimmy Carter enclosed a message in the Voyager spacecraft. He wrote, "We cast this message into the cosmos. It is likely to survive 1 billion years into our future when our civilization is profoundly altered and the surface of the Earth may be vastly changed. Of the 200 billion stars in the Milky Way, some, perhaps many, may have inhabited planets and spacefaring civilizations. If one such civilization intercepts Voyager and can understand these recorded contents, here is our message. This is a present from a small distant world, a token of our sounds, our science, our images, our music, our thoughts, and our feelings. We're attempting to survive our time so we may live into yours. We hope someday, having solved the problems we face, to join a community of galactic civilizations. This record represents our hope and determination and our goodwill in a vast and awesome universe." So I think that sets a pretty lofty, lovely goal for craft this afternoon. And with that, I'm going to begin the program, but I would first like to take just a moment before we get started with dreaming of the future to pause for a moment and reflect on the past. Many of you who are part of our very small, close-knit craft community know that we have lost several close, legendary figures, mentors, and friends over the past year. And I would like to have a moment of silence to honor those people that we've lost who have been part of this exhibition and this museum. Okay, I'll now invite our first presenter up to the stage, Virgil.
That was heavy, but awesome. Thanks for showing that. Thank you, everybody, for coming here and joining all of us in this awesome museum. Thank you, Smithsonian American Art Museum, for having all of us here. And it's really cool to see a bunch of the artists in person where normally we're talking to each other on Zoom. So it's cool to meet everybody in person. Gloria, Kenyon, and Nora Atkinson, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm going to do the best I can. Take a deep breath and then go for it, right? Okay, the title of my presentation is called Evolution Guided by Clay Ancestors. And I wanted to acknowledge my parents, Guadalupe and Severino Ortiz. And I was born into a family of potters on my mother Severina's side of the family. And growing up, waking up every day with having our mom always working at the kitchen, at the dining room table, working on her artwork. That's what I seen every morning before school. When I got back home from school, she'd be doing the same thing. So I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and she always invited us to touch the clay and work with her. And all of like our grandmothers, our aunts, everybody, as long as I can remember, they all worked with clay. And I had no idea that it was an art form that we're creating on a daily basis at home. So every time I get back home from school, most of my friends would go out and play, and they're like, "Are you gonna come out and play?" I'm like, "No, I'm just working with clay and drawing or sketching." But I thought everybody worked with clay, and it was just funny to realize that, we are creating art. I had no idea. And like some of my friends would create clothing or jewelry. But yeah, like our family, our whole household was always handling and working with clay. So remembering what would happen when there's a picture of my parents, Severino and Guadalupe, and some of my family members that are currently working with clay. So the art of using traditional methods and materials at Coche de Pueblo is a dying art form, which really sucks because it's so time consuming. It takes us a whole year to process our materials that we work with. So when we go gather our clay, I just remember how our parents and our grandmothers would always gather the whole family and say like, okay, we're gonna go get some clay today, and all the kids knew what was gonna happen because we get to go run around in the mountains to gather the clay, and to spend the whole day in the mountains doing who knows how long our people have been doing it. So we'd go, and right now, like after our mom passed in 2007, our dad in 2015, I try to remind our family and remind them of like how we used to do it. So like I try to gather all of my members that are currently working with clay, and on screen, Kyle, DJ, Harlan, Lisa, that's me, and my dad. One of our nieces, Dominique, and my 2 sisters, Joyce and Janice. So we gather, get together, and we all go hike up into the mountains to get our clay. And it's such a sacred process to us. So when we were taught how to go harvest the clay, we have to park our vehicles at the bottom of the mountain because it's like impossible to drive your car up there. So the road has got really bad. But that's just like Mother Nature saying like, you better work for it. So like we park on the bottom, and it takes us 30 minutes to hike up to the clay vein. So when we get to the top, we have to introduce ourselves. We feed the clay mother, state our purpose, ask permission, and then also to start digging into her and ask for the blessings and guidance of what all our ancestors have done before us. So once we get all the clay comes out of the earth, and it's still really dense and damp. It looks like dark chocolate, which is really cool. But we're one of the last families that actually goes to harvest the clay here. So when we go to the clay vein, like it has been caved in, so we have to remove all the debris. And that's where my nephews come in very handy. They're stronger than I am, so they clear the path to the clay vein. So once we go through the whole process of asking permission and feeding Earth Mother, then we start to harvest the clay. So we gather like 5-gallon buckets of clay, haul them back down to the vehicles, which takes another 30 minutes to go down. And so you're carrying 2 buckets. Imagine carrying 2 buckets of 5-gallon buckets filled with clay, and that's super heavy. So you could like take 20 steps, and then you put it down and just keep going all the way till you get to the bottom to your vehicles. And as many buckets as we could fill or carry that day, then we go back home and we throw the clay into our barn as storage, and we have to let it dry for like a whole year. Because the reason why to process the clay this way is that like you could normally soak the clay when you get it out and it's still damp, but even if you soak it for a long time, it's so dense it doesn't dissolve. So you'll have like little pure forms of clay within like rocks of clay. And if you have the pure clay little balls in there and you start creating with it, it's most likely will crack the piece or either create explosions. So that's why we have to dry it for a year. So once the clay is drying for a year, we go to another part of the pueblo, and on the bottom, you'll see a video coming up after these couple of slides, the whole process, like a whole year wrapped into 5 minutes. But then we go to another part of the pueblo to get the pumice stone, which is the white sand on the bottom left-hand side. That comes out in chunks as well. So then we get a bunch of that, fill up the truck bed, take it back home, and then we could, since it's already dried out, we lay down a piece of canvas. I put on my combat boots and start dancing on it. Turn on the music, right? And you crush it so it like pummels to like already very fine sand. And once you get the sand together, we put like sprinkle some water on it to keep the dust down, and then we have to put it through two screens to sift it, and it comes out like baby powder, I would say. So it's like super fine like that. So once you have the clay ready, all dried out to bone dry, and you have the pumice stone all sifted down. So now when you get the clay, we put it in an old coffee bucket. And I have a steel bar that I throw little pieces at a time, and I chop it up and I pulverize it to like maybe 1/4 inch size cubes of the clay. So once I crush that up, then we have a plastic bin sitting on the side, and we distribute the crushed up clay and then slowly add water to it. So it's starting to rehydrate itself evenly. So you do that till the bin is full and it's all starting to rehydrate. So after about a week, the clay starts to pull away from the bin, and then that's like a sign of like, okay, it's ready to be mixed now. So you have the pumice stone, the powder, then also the clay. So we're very protective of this clay. So like I only mix a ball of clay if I'm gonna make like a medium-sized pot, and we really don't have like any measurements. So like the ingredients, I guess, like how much to add of each. We just more or less know like the weight of it. So once you're mixing the clay together, then you slowly run your thumb through it, and if it's still super sleek, then you add more of the pumice stone to it. So until it gets like a little gritty, and then that's how we know the clay body is ready to work with. So it becomes way less sticky to work with it when it's really pure. But once you add the pumice stone to it, then it becomes malleable, and you're able to create with it. So then all of our pieces, the traditional work, are all made like about, the walls are a little over 1/4 inch thick, and they all have to be more or less the same thickness, because when it dries, it has to dry the same way. But the most important thing is when we fire it, it's an open pit fire. So it has to expand and contract at the same time. So if a piece is a little bit thicker, it'll explode. So each of the pieces that I create, like say an 18-inch size figure or like a 20-inch size pot, like it takes about maybe 3 months to create. So I probably create maybe like 15 pieces in a year. And that's like going high, because my like cracking or explosions, that rate is still probably like about 90%. So like, I mean, imagine all that work going through it, and when you fire it, you're hearing a thud in it, or like yeah, just some kind of sound, and like your heart breaks right away. So you don't realize it till you, because like the firing process is the last part of the whole part of this creation. So on the right side, that is the wild spinach paint that we make to decorate the pots. And once the plant starts to bloom its purple flowers, that's an alarm clock to go pick it. So again, I gather the whole family to go collect the leaves. So we get probably just like, I would say like 8 33-gallon size bags of just the leaves only, like no stems. So it's like a long, tedious project, but that's how our mom taught us. And one time I tried to just take the stems and like cheat and do it really quick, but the paint didn't turn out, so I like wasted 2 weeks of my life doing it that way. So it's best to listen to your mom. So anyways, it was like, you get it home and we have these really big, huge boiling pots. So we stuff the spinach in there, fill it up with water and boil it for like continuously for maybe like 5 days. Then it starts to disintegrate. And again, that's where the nephews come in handy because they can stay up all night. And we boil it, and then what we're doing is just trying to we're after the juice. So after a certain part where it starts to disintegrate the leaves, then we have to strain them. So we just take a cotton rag, strain them out, twist it, and get the juice. And then keep boiling it. Then it starts condensing to like about half a gallon from really big pots right down to half a gallon. It's crazy. So at that point, then I take over and I take it inside and I put it on the stove. It smells really good at first, but after like 2 weeks, you're like, no more of that smell. But you have to watch it really closely because it's boiling, and we just, again, like we don't know like how much or how long we're supposed to do it, because sometimes I'll make a small batch by myself, or when I have the whole family, then I have a bigger batch. But you just have to watch how it boils, and it turns like, imagine, I always compare it to making like the red candy apples. You know how you boil it, it's like lava, right? And you have to watch it, and then you cannot burn it, because if you burn it, it will not stick to the polished clay slip. So again, you wasted your 2 weeks of working. But at a certain point, you add a little bit of sugar to help it caramelize, and once it starts to caramelize, you have to take it off the flame. And then we dry it on corn husks, and about the 6-month mark when it's dry and it's like still soft, like kind of like taffy, you can still bend it, it's malleable. But we have to wait till about a year, then it hardens up to like a Jolly Rancher. I always compare it to that. And once you can just break off the little pieces of the wild spinach paint, crush that up, add a little bit of water, and then that's our black paint. So our traditional colors of Kochidi are black, white, and red. But once, okay, so now you molded, you sculpted a pot or a figure, and providing that it dried without any cracks, then you sand it down, because we have to get a super smooth surface, and take a light coating of water to remove all the dust from it. And if it fits in your oven, heat it up to 350, or if it doesn't fit in your oven, then you have to build a fire outside to heat up the piece, because we want it heated it up because our clay is red, and then we're going to transform it to a white clay surface. So when it's heated up, then we take a really thin coating of another white clay slip, start to coat the whole thing, and when you're applying it, when it's hot, it starts to evaporate and stick to the porousness of it. And put it back in, heat it up, take it back out, and you repeat this probably about 10 times, so it slowly changes from red surface to all white. And after you cool it down, you get another cotton rag, and it comes out of the oven. When it's cooled down, it's a matte surface, and then once it cools down, you rag polish it, and it turns from a matte surface to a glossy surface. And when that happens, you're like kind of sealing compacting all of the white clay slip onto the red clay body. But at that point, you cannot touch any of the white part that you intend to be white on the pottery, because no matter how many times you wash your hands, we still have like natural oils that come off our hands. And if you touch some of this white surface, you won't even notice until after you fire it. And when you fire it, there's like a big old smudge mark. And another thing that's funny is, like, I always try to invite my family and all my nieces and nephews to do this process, because I want them to learn and hand down what we do as like our grandparents did to us, right? And they all know you're not supposed to touch the pieces at this point. And when I make them, a sandwich or something, or a pizza, and I do the whole painting, which takes me another 2 weeks to paint, and then I fire it, then all of a sudden you see a little tiny fingerprint on it. I'm like, oh, I told you guys to stay away. But it's just like their signature. And you know that they're absorbing the teachings and lessons. So I'm like, okay, cool. But then, so once you decorate the whole piece, and you can, like our pots, the rims on the top are black, so you can more or less know you can handle it there and like tilt it this way, have a lazy Susan on the bottom, a banding wheel. So you're able to turn it back and forth. Or the figures usually tend to have black like gloves or maybe a hat or shoes, so I can handle them that way. And I knew they're going to be black, so that's cool to hold them there. And then you decorate the whole thing, and you cannot erase, because like I started to work, which is the title, Evolution of Clay, right, as well. But like to work with high fire ceramics, you have to bisque the piece first, and then you could glaze it. And if you make a mistake, you take a sponge, just wipe it right off. But with the traditional work, you touch that paintbrush of the wild spinach to the polished clay piece, you cannot erase it. It's there to stay. So any mistakes, you try to work it into the design and make it look like it was meant to be there. But you paint the whole thing, and then when we fire, we usually fire early in the morning. And we call it pit firing, but it's above ground, so we have to burn the ground first and make sure that everything is completely bone dry, warmed up, and it's on a little steel grate like 8 inches off the ground with a kiln shelf on it. And we only fire one piece at a time. So I've been working on this piece for like 3 months. It's like a really big piece, which is a really big piece for me, is like around 30 inches tall. And it's all decorated, ready to go. Your heart's thumping because you know anything could happen if you had the slightest air bubble in it. So you're saying all your prayers, you're going through the process, remembering the teachings of our mom saying like, oh, it broke, okay, do it again. But okay, doing this, and then, so we put the figure, when we fire one piece at a time, put the figures standing up, or pots are fired upside down. So then once we have that piece sitting there, then we cover it and make a little cage with chicken wire. And the chicken wire is around the piece, like maybe 8 inches breathing room around the piece, but the chicken wire is for to provide a base for our cow manure, a dried out cow manure to pack around the whole piece. So it comes out looking like a beehive when the cow pies are stacked around it. And we use aspen and cedar wood to start the fire. So we have to ignite it from evenly from all sides, because we want the fire and the smoke to rise together in one pulling up form. Because if there's wind or something and the smoke and the fire touches the piece, it will leave a smudge mark. So you have to do it. It's really precise to do it this way. But once you get it going, about 2 hours in, then finally the cow manure starts to ignite. So we stop feeding it the wood, and we let the cow manure burn into a big old ball of flame, and it burns from the outside in, and that creates our kiln. So we just let it go from there until it dies out, cools off, and providing that you didn't hear any cracking or popping, then you stick your finger into the chicken wire. It's still all held together, the ashes, pull it off, and then there's a piece. So then you're saying of all kinds of prayers if it's all in one piece. Take it out, and then you have to rag polish it again, because now all of the wild spinach paint went from like translucent brown to black. So it has all the ashes on it, so you have to clean it off. And normally, just by handling it over time, it gives it like a patina on it that kind of seals it with your natural oils again. But to speed up that process, I use animal fat or either egg white, like egg tempera, like painters do, to seal it. And it does the same thing for our skin, like it gets your skin nice and the true color. And it does the same thing for the pottery walls and the paint designs. So after that, then you call up the museums and see if they're interested. But here's the videos talking about that explains shows the whole process and of a whole year's work in like 5 minutes or so. I guess we removed the music, but I could like beatbox right now if you guys want to. When you're at this point, when you're pouring that water off over the crushed bone dry clay, it smells like rain. And it's like there's nothing that smells like that. It's so good. You want to just like stick your face in it, and it works better with the music. Because I love filming all of our process and my nieces and nephews, and just because we all laugh at, because now they're all grown. It's fun to show them like what they were doing, just to remind them, like, come on guys, you can do it again. Let's go to the mountains and gather more of the materials. And then once we get it back home, then there's the part where we crush it up and sift it. Thank God for nieces and nephews. There's some dance music going on here normally. So the crush is pretty fine. Just put a little bit of water to reduce the dust on it. And then put it through 2 screens, and it comes out super fine. Once you get those 2 together, it's time to mix it together. And like I told you guys, we really don't know the amounts of each materials that we use, but if I know I'm going to make a medium pot or a small figure, then we more or less know how much to use. Then it's all coil and scrape method that we do. I would love to try. I tried doing it on the wheel, but I failed. You can eat this plant when it's really young, but when it's at this stage, it's a little bit bitter. But it's this is for a small batch. So when I get back, it's probably, we have to watch for the blooming purple flowers, and it's time to make the paint again. So once we have all that done, this is what it looks like when I was telling you about of how we have to build the beehive using the chicken wire and the cow pies, surrounded by the cedar wood and aspen wood. And it's usually helpful to have the whole family there to do this, and we help each other fire our pieces together. Close-ups, or like if it's sometime during the winter time, then on the right-hand side, one of my nephews, Kyle, is a metalsmith, so he built barrels for us to put those in there, and that also works too. It takes a lot more wood to fire it that way, but it's a little bit safer to do it during the winter months. Samples of our mom's pieces. On the left-hand side, Cochiti is known for the storyteller figure, so it's always been like a grandmother, a mother, a dad, or even animals carrying their babies. And it's just telling the stories of how, what happened to our people, passing down our language, because our language is not written. So that's a way of like how to pass down our stories and document a timeline. Sample of my mother's storyteller, a drummer figure. I made the piece with it in the red when I was 6 years old. Our grandmother, Laurencita Herrera, I don't know what year that was, but on the 2 pieces on the right side were some of my experimental pieces. This Benwedick photo is stuck in my mind the first time I seen it, and knowing that the Cochiti pottery making is a dying art form, and when I had no idea about these pieces that were made in Cochiti in the late 1800s, but once I seen these pieces, I was like, these are so cool how they look. They look like all performers, right? And then I found out that they're all based on like traveling circus sideshows and operas. So like all of the new people that were coming into the area via the newly laid railroads were bringing more people, so more entertainment came. So like all the more people that the indigenous people were exposed to, they were making caricatures of them in clay. So that was a way of telling the timeline and what they were seeing at that time. So you would see a lot of like conjoined twins, ring masters, opera performers, and that's what I really resonated with, because I love designing clothes now. And I wanted my family to recreate this image here, so we pulled it off. And it was like a 22-piece set, and now they reside at the Cartier Museum in Paris. It's in their permanent collection. So that was a really cool project to work on with my family. This is a sample of some of my traditional pottery work. So a lot of the Kojiki pieces are designed with natural elements like clouds and our kiva steps in our ceremonial houses, the wild spinach plant, clouds, and rain. But once I started to really figure out like, okay, everything was based on social commentary from the pieces from the 1800s, I said, okay, I'm going to start to really comment on what I'm seeing, but also do it on pots and figures as well. So then I started commenting even like on political pieces like this, right? This is one piece at different angles, so it's commenting on the different political figures of the greed. And at that time, I made this when it was when the Dakota Access Pipeline was going on. And so that's why the politicians riding the black snake, and that is the black snake is representative of the oil pipelines. And then the middle one is like all the fracking that goes through, and the snakes have infiltrated the politician's body. And then on the top right is a woman's hand taking the politician out. Go women. And then also a cyberbully, this piece is called, but he's cyberbully sitting on the can tweeting at 5 a.m. So you can recognize, yeah. So it's just funny how to use this type of work of our people done in commentary. So it's that, you know, I'm giving voice back to the clay, because like when the invaders first came to our pueblo, a lot of the artwork was destroyed because the indigenous people were accused of sorcery and witchcraft. So they're replacing them with all these other different saints and stuff. So what I'm doing is like, okay, I'm going to give the clay voice again to talk and comment. So that's what a lot of my work's about. The LGBTQ community, and this one is called Hate is a Drag. So it's really cool to see all the performers, and you know, Lady Gaga is a big influence in this one. And then I slowly started to get into clothing and like taking the imagery, the design detail elements, and then transferring them to leather handbags. So you can see how it lent itself nicely to it. And then also creating pieces that were very fashion oriented. I was able to collaborate with Donna Karen, and that's one of our pieces on the left-hand side, and you could see exactly how it comes from the traditional pottery designs. Then I developed my own fashion line. So I got into like all different types of fabrics, handbags, what you name it, wool, and that grew itself back when I was young. So Mila Jovovich was the first supermodel to wear my clothing. I almost passed out when I met her. But I didn't know it was going to be her doing the whole ad campaign for Donna Karen, but it was so cool to go through this process, and that was in 2002 for her 2003 spring line. And it was like going to FIT college in like 3 months, because I got to be with her in her office and meet her whole team, and you know, just ghost her and take notes of everything I could ask and remember. So I seen how her whole team went from designing it to creating it to making all the patterns on the material, and then all the way down to cut and sew, the manufacturing level, and then to have it in her Times Square office, and like when all the department stores would come in to make their orders. So I watched the whole process, and that's like, I learned so much again from doing that. So that's where you see all of my fashion. It comes the business part is I looked up to her, and she was awesome to work with and share all of her knowledge. Then started to getting into really taking photographs of my models and creating characters and body painting, and really combining both fashion and the pottery designs on bodies. Also going to make some lithograph prints down in Albuquerque at the Tamarind School in Albuquerque. So I'm developing all these characters, and I was like, why am I seeing all these messages or hearing all these messages of these characters that are very graphic and bold? And so like a lot of like, I know what I'm going through right now it's not my talent, it's just lent to me. I feel like I'm just a conduit. I'm a bead in a necklace. So like all of the storylines and all how the evolution of all the heart and soul of what I do is the traditional pottery. But then you can see it's like spreading to all these different types of mediums, the hospitality design industry, duvet beds, headboards, the anything that you would see in a hotel room. The desks, the mirrors, the chairs, the carpet, the wallpaper, and that was a fun time to develop all of this stuff. But I just encourage like all the students that I work with, like don't hold yourself back from trying anything. Like no matter how many times you fail, look at those failures as your lessons, because those are the best teachers. And just keep trying everything, because you'll eventually use them all together. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680, have you guys heard of that before? Some of you have, and some of them I see knows too, but most people don't know about it because it's been swept under the carpet because of the genocide that happened to our people in the Pueblos and all over, right? But it's not taught in schools, it's not in our textbooks. So I was like, how do I educate the world about what happened to our people, what will capture the next generation's attention? And luckily I have 43 nieces and nephews to test it out on. So I started creating all these, that's the two reasons I feel why I'm in this dimension in this earth right now, is to make sure that the art of the traditional clay stays alive, and then also to educate globally about the 1680 Pueblo Revolt. So that's my mission while I'm here. So I was like, cool, I'll write a film script. And I've been so influenced by like seeing Star Wars for the first time when I was 6 years old. And I learned all of the characters, all of like where they're from, what kind of spaceships they drove in, how they dressed, how they talked. So I was like, how did I learn all that when I was 6 years old? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the same thing and talk about the 1680 Pueblo Revolt, but create my own characters. And I am not an academic person, so I was like, I can't just do it like when it happened in 1680. I want sci-fi, I want Star Trek, I want Star Wars, I want Battlestar Galactica all mixed together. So I said, okay, I'm gonna tell this story happening simultaneously in two time dimensions of 1680 and 2180. So that allows me to really create superheroes, indigenous superheroes. And because if you don't have like cool characters like this, like none of the next generation will pay attention. So like you look at Avengers, you look at the Black Panther, you look at the new Star Wars saga, everything. The Mandalorian, right, it's really cool. So thinking about the social networks, I had to create like really cool looking characters. So combining everything that I know how to do with body painting, with painting on pottery, different museum shows, gallery shows, I started creating I designed 19 groups of characters that represent the 19 pueblos that are still left in New Mexico today. So this is a sample of how we combine Photoshop and take the photographs and really start to develop the characters as fully as I can. So when we do go into production, we don't change too much of them. They keep their integrity. These are the Venusian soldiers, and they're part of the first part of the movie where in the future, in 2180, their pueblo gets bombed first, so that's why they're wearing gas masks and breathing tubes, oxygen tanks. And their mission, they're moving their pueblo to find new land to live on that they can breathe on. So that's their story. Again, combining, now using the pots to place the characters on and then have them interacting with the characters. This part is just fun because all my friends, we're like, okay, we're gonna do these characters now, let's go. Okay, I'm like, I wanna get painted, let's do this. And just to get that shot, like everybody's jumping around on mattresses in my studio and we're trying to get that one shot that we want. But just a sample of the behind the scenes of how I come up with the graphics. Ta'u is like one of the lead characters that is behind my whole storyline, and I love women empowerment. I have a strong grandmother, mother, a bunch of sisters and nieces, and I want to hold them up in high regard, so I made sure that I had a strong woman character. Her name is Ta'u, leader of the Blind Archers. And you can see the women empowerment, feel the strength of everybody, what you guys are all badass. I mean, you guys are running this show, this is so cool. More of the characters, and like, I really love using all different types of materials. Like the middle figure was made out of recycled billboards that I had to show in Colorado Springs. When I had the opportunity to meet Jun Kaneko, you guys know who he is, like room master at ceramics, and I've always wanted to make really gargantuan pieces. And I'm driving back from a Agamo firing in Wisconsin. I stopped in Omaha, Nebraska, and I was able to go meet with him and talk with him. And I was like, dude, how do we? He goes, I know your work, and I almost passed out again. I was like, what? And I just wanted, he goes, ask me anything you want. And he goes, I want you to ask any questions. Like my head manager for my studio manager is going to take you on a tour. Ask him any questions. I told him that to give you all the information that you wanted and just spread it to all the other potters that you know, indigenous or not, and all the universities that you go to, tell them how I do it. So my first question was like, how do I go that big? So, because to make a ceramic piece that big, it has to dry, keep in mind. But when it's drying and the whole piece has to shrink together. And like most of the time, like if I were to just try it without any of his knowledge, the piece would crack. So I was like, oh man, but how does he do it? But how he showed me how to do the bases. And it's really cool to understand because it's almost, the base part is a double wall. So there's like a little inner circle in there like a donut, then it spreads out, then the walls come up. So this is how he displays his works. Like if you see his work outside on a big pedestal, you think it's just sitting there on a pedestal, like anybody could push it over, but it's really ingenious how we design it because the inner circle provides a place to come from underneath the pedestal. Poles come up, they come in, they clamp down on it on all sides. So that's how he secures it on the bottom of the pedestal, then he closes it up. So it's very, not only structural sound, but it also helps like for winds or anything, or people pushing it. So I was able to go to the Archie Bray in Montana, so I wanted to go big. So that's a sample of when I was working huge I invited my friend Justin Reese to help me build these big pieces because he throws pots and I wanted to go as big as we can. So, and he's like 6'5", so he has longer arms and he could reach into to like really scrape out the insides of it. But these are samples of when we worked big. So that's Justin there. It was an amazing time at the Archie Bray because of all their resources that they had, like all the machinery to pull around like a 300-pound piece. They had it all there and all the big kilns. So these are some of the works that we're working on that's going to be released at the Bladum Contemporary Museum in Santa Fe and also at History Colorado Museum. That's going to open this May in Denver. That was a backbreaker. And I really wanted to make these look like they were bronze with that type of patina on it. So it's all glazed, but it looks, when you see it in person, it looks like it was on top of a goth building in Prague or something. A sample of the sizes. This is Sujin. She was one of the residents up at Archie Bray. So she's very knowledgeable, and I really thanked her for helping me fire these pieces, and we became really good friends, but Sujin rocks. So that's the whole evolution guided by the clay ancestors, and like where we're aiming at right now is to bring these characters to life. A behind the scenes look really quick of the plaster molds that we put on my friends' faces, get the plaster molds, cover them with wax clay, and start carving them to look like some of my pottery pieces. And the reason why I'm doing this is to create really like movie quality masks that will fit each individual model exactly to their faces. And we use silicone and resins to make molds after I carve it out of the wax clay, get the molds, and then a sample of when they come out. When we combine the fashion and all the armors made out of foam. So I learned how to do the foam fabrication on YouTube University. So like, again, like when you just try anything that you want, don't hold yourself back. It's just very fun to throw yourself into art. Art saves lives, and art saved my life. Some more samples of the Recon Watchmen. The Recon Watchmen, what they're doing is they're us in the future. So they're coming from 2180 to the present time, historic times, and they're collecting artifacts and shards like pots, our language, our costumes, our songs, anything, the artwork, taking them to 2180, storing them, protecting them so that when we reach 2180, we still have all of our traditions, our ceremonies, our songs intact. A sample, we shot this out in northwest New Mexico, but it's pretty cool to combine again. And I was working on this image and these characters for a Meow Wolf installation in Santa Fe. So this is part of the Meow Wolf installation. You guys know what Meow Wolf is, I'm pretty sure. But that was such a change. And am I over time? Am I good? I tend to take everybody to band camp. Sorry. So I keep going, but samples of how it turned out. So this is all, again, like interactive. Normally my pieces would be in a vitrine behind glass, and now to have it interact, like people climbing on it, kids touching it, taking selfies with it, I had to really change my way of thinking, but that opened my mind to do really interactive stuff in museum installations now. So this is what's going to happen over at History Colorado. I'm introducing the runners and gliders. The runners were part of the 1680 Pueblo revolts. Their role was to run from the northern pueblos to the southern pueblos and take knotted cords to distribute them to each pueblo along the Rio Grande. And they distributed them to the heads of all the pueblos, and they instructed them to untie one knot every day. When the last knot was untied, and that's how they timed the revolt. Last knot untied, they all rose up and pushed the invaders out. The gliders, runners are from 1680, the gliders are from 2180, so now they're capable of flight. So they're wearing like the wing, what are they called, the wing costumes that they can jump off of buildings and stuff. So now they're flying now, capable of flight. That's the end. Sorry if I took too long.
Thank you so much, Virgil. That was immensely inspiring. Okay, how do we make time? This is actually the kind of question that I think about a lot in my own practice. If time is a construct, my goal is to try to figure out exactly how it's constructed. And I'm constantly searching for all the ways that time is made tangible in the world around us. And I realize that we actually all make time in lots of small ways every day. Our bodies are natural time machines. One of my ex-boyfriends had a belly button that somehow created the most enormous ball of lint on a daily basis. And as we were getting ready for bed every night, I would pick the lint out of his belly button and just be so amazed by it, because I don't know about you, but my belly button does not do this. And at some point, I started pinning these balls of lint on a calendar that I drew on the wall. And I loved how each piece of lint was unique. A product and record of that single day, you know, the fibers from the clothing that he was wearing, and they were somehow felted together by the movement of his body through the world. They're each like little sort of belly button sized time capsules. I also think we make time every day by practicing our daily rituals. And I have 1 cup of coffee every single day. And when I lived in New York, I would get that cup of coffee from a bodega on my way to work. And I really hated my job at that time. And my days started to feel really disposable, just like those cups of coffee I was throwing away on my way to work every day. So many years later, I made this sculpture that I called Coffee Cup Conveyor Belt Calendar. I made molds of those disposable coffee cups, and I cast them in porcelain, but I didn't fire them. And every day, an unfired cup is added to the end of this conveyor belt, which is driven by a wind-up clock. So as the clock ticks, the cups slowly move along and pass by Post-it notes that say, today, tomorrow, the day after that, the day after that, the day after that. And after about 5 days, the cup reaches the other end, and it falls off the conveyor belt and smashes on the floor. And a Post-it note on the wall near the floor says, yesterday. But I'm an optimist by nature, so that isn't where the story ends. Because the cups were unfired, I could actually gather up all the broken pieces and put them in a bucket of water, reconstitute them into slip, and then begin the whole process again by casting a new batch of cups. I'm inspired by all the ways that we measure time in our daily lives, just like the height charts that we draw on the walls of our houses when our kids are growing up. And this one is inspired by my own son's height chart. One day I asked him how tall he thinks he's going to be when he grows up, and I asked him to point to that spot on the wall, and that's where I wrote the word someday. And then that very moment became now, and then all the times before that that I measured him on the wall became then. I'm a conceptual artist, so I've always gravitated towards language as a sculptural material. And I like to give words tangible forms that we can experience in real time and space, because I think we can understand an idea more fully if we experience it physically. I like to think I sculpt words the way that other artists sculpt materials like clay or wood. And in this case, I took a piece of red yarn and I soaked it in water and I froze it into the word now and then hung it on the wall and allowed it to melt so that I could actually watch it become this. I get a lot of my inspiration from reading about the physics or the philosophy of time. But I like to use simple, everyday language as points of entry into really complex ideas that often feel sort of beyond my intellectual grasp. And I've always loved the word now for the way that it can have many different meanings depending on the context you use it in. So it can refer to right this second or this century. And similarly, I've always loved the word then because it can refer to both the past and the future. This inflatable sculpture connects those two words to the same air source, so one literally has to suck the air out of the other in order to bring itself into existence. And not only do I use language to express meaning, but I also take advantage of the way that meaning can be embedded in a material. And I like the way that different materials each have their own duration or lifespan. I explore the condition of possibilities afforded by the broadest range of media, and that includes cut flowers in this case, to welded steel, which rusts and corrodes over time, although we like to think of it as a more permanent material. And I love how viewing sculpture is a very embodied experience. The work inhabits your physical space, so you can walk around it and see it from multiple perspectives. And your individual perspective matters. In this case, it helps you shape the work's meaning by how you actually see that word future. Because my work is typically text-based, I'm naturally drawn to all different kinds of signage for inspiration. And I like to co-opt the styles and kind of structures of commercial signage to communicate message that I think inspire a sense of wonder or introspection or reflection. And I like to use language that most people can understand. And when I use neon, I don't just illuminate the words, I also animate them. And the timing is intentionally slow enough so that it can hold your attention and keep you present, but also make you aware of time's passing. This present moment used to be the unimaginable future is a quote written by the futurist Stuart Brand, which I illuminated with his blessing. And I've always loved this quote because how you can relate to it on a very personal level and also on a universal level and think about what's going on in the world around you. I had the opportunity to bring this sign to the top of a mountain where there are trees, there are the oldest living trees in the world that are over 5,000 years old. And I loved how placing the work in this environment allowed me to juxtapose many different timescales simultaneously, from the flashing of the neon to the lifespan of those trees to the sort of geography of the landscape, which took millions of years to form. And after the sun went down, as you can see, it revealed this timescale of galaxies. And when I first made this sign in 2019, I chose the color pink as a shout out to the Me Too movement, because at that time it felt like the world was changing for the better. And I never could have imagined that I would be standing here in this moment where, Roe v. Wade was overturned just 3 years later. And although it feels kind of impossible to imagine a brighter future in that respect right now, the experience I had on Mount Washington really gave me a more expansive view of this present moment, a bigger sense of here and a longer sense of now. And I think that also helps to expand our sense of possibility. So I believe we can make time by focusing more on what is meaningful instead of what is urgent. And, you know, in doing so, we can start to imagine those otherwise unimaginable futures. Thank you. So next up, we have the De La Torre brothers.
So first of all, we want to say how honored we are to be here, and how I want to thank every single person involved with making this happen.
But we do have to point out that it's a little bit absurd that we spent 9 hours in flights to get here and back to talk a few minutes about how we make time. Having said that, during the flight, I was in my head meditating and thinking about what we do and why we do it, which is a precious resource that we don't have, this moment of boredom that is almost a meditative state, and how hard it is to find that these days.
So in COVID, I think made us all think a little bit about time and how we spend it, I guess, as a commodity. And so for us, not much changed, weirdly, because our studio in Baja California is, literally half a block from our house. This is Kamix's house, which he handcrafted. And this is my house that I'm handcrafting now, made out of rammed earth. So this is the border. It's a very stark image of what the border is like. This is literally the border going into the Pacific Ocean. So this image has a lot to do with our practice and how we spend time, because we go from a studio in San Diego down to our studio in Baja, an hour and a half, as it were, but there's also a border we have to traverse, which is not just a physical border, semi-permeable membrane that it is, but it is also the fact that it's a cultural delineation. And I think that time is perceived very differently in different cultures and in different parts of the country.
So like Anya was saying, we divide our moment or time on both sides of the border. So sharing the time in the studio, it has become increasingly difficult. I'm a father, so I have to attend to my kids' things and education. And we're spending a lot more time working through video chat.
So when we make glass, as a glass makers, that's a kind of an intense moment. You have a team of people, you have the right equipment, and we have drawings, and we really need to cut, to the chase and make this happen. A very, very different use of time than when we're in our studio where we're making mixed media objects out of that. Here, sometimes, like my brother says, I might be working and maybe usually I plod on, but if I really want to ask my brother something, I'll send him a text or send him a picture or even do video chat. Because time is so difficult to be at the same place at the same time. We often joke that when we travel is when we are together in an airplane or in a hotel, and we're talking about something in the same space because our lives have all these moving parts like everybody else.
In our studio, we like to keep what we call a very controlled mess, but it has to be messy for us to. It doesn't. Whenever we over-organize, it's like paralyzing in a way.
And so you can imagine the intensity of the glass. Here's some finished work. Oops, went too far. Well, it'll catch up, I guess. So the intensity of making the glass, then going to our studio is like just rewind, going slow. We're using found objects. Don't love that term. We usually spend a lot of time looking for the right objects, and we have a library of a bunch of material culture to draw from. And this material culture informs our work very much because we are, of course, living in this space and time, and it's an anthropological way of speaking about what you're using. So even though the top parts are all blown glass, the bases on the middle one has a pressed glass mold. The one on the left is a cast resin with bottle caps. The one on the right is also cast resin. And so all of these things come together in a much slower frame of time than when we're blowing glass that has that intensity and teamwork, and you can't vacillate a whole lot. And also, it bears saying that when we're blowing in different studios all across the nation and sometimes the world, also the place itself informs you. Their culture of what's happening and the way you view time is different, and you have to abide by. You don't just go there and say, the way we do things. If you're in another country, you're going to work with the way they do things. And I think that that is an adaptation that we need to always be conscious of.
So essentially, all these blown glass and these lenticular panels we are producing in the United States and Europe and smuggling them into Mexico, and then finishing them in our studio in Mexico and re-smuggling into the US, so double smuggle stuff.
So here a rare moment that we're both in the studio together in Baja California. The piece that we're looking at is a lenticular piece with a blown glass piece in front of it. And when I click the button, you'll see on the right that the lenticular image will show you some of the movement that's available when you move in front of the piece. It's an analog technology that actually will move as you move in front of it. It's a parallax blocker, and I can tell you more. I don't have time to explain the whole thing, but talk to me. So this is a larger finished lenticular piece. The reason it's a little blurry is because you need stereo vision. So people usually need to take videos to get that spatial movement. But at least you could see with a water jet aluminum cut frame. Again, an issue of time. To go fabricate anything outside of our studio, it's a different use of time altogether than something that's inside.
And this is us blowing glass in the Pilchuck School of Glass, north of Seattle. And in blowing glass, time gets compressed into this hyper moment because everything has to happen in a tremendous rush, having the material molten to fabricate something.
And we also, aside from studio work, we also make public art. So this is an example of public art. Very different way of looking at time, because then you have committees, and you have engineers, and you have architects, and you have to get along with all these folks and attend meetings, which is the worst part of it all, is attending meetings. So there's a couple examples. This is hand-carved cantera stone with ceramic flowers, about 21 feet tall, in a hospital in LA. Light rail station, Rosa Parks. You can faintly see our image in the cutouts. These are 6 giant parasols, 16 feet by 16 feet.
And this is a giant lenticular, 27 feet tall, at the Cheech Museum, where we had a big retrospective last year.
And a retrospective is a funny thing to have, because then you really think about time in relation to your life. And you are here, which of course you think of, wait, how much is left? Somebody say something. I'm being told to stop, so I'm going to rifle through these last images. And we're also a show that's touring in Europe, which is a whole other thing that is problematic for the time consumption and figuring out how to tour that. Anyway, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Jiha Moon.
Hello, everybody. Well, I'm in the audience seat, and I was all laughing, watching, and my turn came. And to the Torre brothers, thank you so much. Your works are amazing, and so is all the other people. And I realized how privileged I am to be here standing and talking about my work at the moment. And many of you know probably know me as a painter. I am a painter, but I think at the end of the day, we want to be an artist. We are the same kind. And today, I'm going to show you images from my most recent series called The Yellow Wave for both paintings and ceramic sculptures. The very first ceramic sculpture of the series in the show at Renwick Gallery is from Yellow Wave series. Yellow Wave series centered around the color yellow in a large brush strokes that allows people to think of color more a social and political way. I consider my painting as a complex, layered, and often chaotic cultural landscape, and I consider my ceramic sculpture as hybrid portrait. For these large, energetic brushworks not only reference iconic images of 60s pop artist Roy Lichtenstein's painting of the brushstrokes, but I also intend to create these to honor Asian community and their representation through my work. For smaller scale, I tend to focus on made-up iconography that I can explore of bridging different cultures and generational gap. Here I am combining American sailor's tattoo with 19th century Korean folk art called minhwa. Stranger Yellow is the largest monochromatic style painting that I have worked on. After March 16th spot shooting in Atlanta, which is my almost hometown, I needed some time to think about what had happened and process in my studio and try to visualize that. Although calling yellow to Asian can be derogatory, I try to use color yellow brighter, out loud, and sunshine-like. I try to make my painting more alert and beautiful at the same time. Everything that I do for painting process can be applied on the surface of ceramic. And ceramic sculptures get more exciting because the objects are inviting and friendly. Unlike painting, people are unguarded and they try to touch it and they collect them and you can see them at your family's house or friend's house as a souvenir. And I really wanted to borrow that power to talk about the imagery. So far from here, I would like to introduce some of the important thoughts while you're looking at the images from my latest solo show called Stranger Yellow, showcasing Yellow Wave series. This show was up last January and February at Derek Eller Gallery in New York. At the end of the slide talk, you will see the installation pictures as well. The simple question, where are you from, can be tricky to answer these days. Identity as a concept linked to geography, citizenship, ethnicity, and race tend to morph, and these shifts strongly affect my work imagery as Asian American living in the Deep South in America. My sculptures are hybrid cultural portraits that look simultaneously familiar and strange. I take cues from both Eastern and Western images, folklore, art history, and popular cultures. I twist and hybridize these to tell new stories of different global lives. I incorporate my source of inspiration to make my own stories, such as Korean folk art, American tattoo design, Mexican mask and milagros, fortune cookies from American Chinese restaurant, blue willow pattern, the ever misunderstanding of Asian love story done by British design company. You may think of pop artist Roy Lichtenstein's brushstroke of a blonde woman, but I intend to emphasize color yellow as Asian representation of glorious visibility in my Yellow Wave series. My inspirations include emoticon, smiley face as 21st century is the most minimalistic portrait, banana, the symbol of second generation of Asian American, and even southern face jugs and peaches, the state fruit of Georgia, where I have lived for the past 15 years. I tease and change these lexicons so that they are familiar yet harder to identify in this new context. And for this installation, we came up with the two larger tables that bring the height to almost as important as level as painting, how they're hung in the gallery, so people can pay attention to the surface and how I paint and glaze them. And also, they almost represent as a group of people. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anya Montiel, and I'm a former curator at the Renwick Gallery, and I'm now a curator at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. It was so lovely to be able to be with Mary Savig and Nora Atkinson as they were working on this present moment, and it's wonderful to be invited back. And so at this moment, we are going to have a conversation with the artists that you have heard from earlier. So if Virgil Ortiz and Alicia Eggert and the De La Torre brothers and Jiha Moon, if you wouldn't mind coming back on stage for a conversation. Yes, thank you very much, Gloria, for arranging, to go from the podium to now all of us seated here, so thank you very much. So one of the questions that I have is, in a lot of your works, how do you use your work to talk about bringing the past into the present into the future? There, you all spoke about time, but you do it in just such unique ways. So if you wouldn't really mind talking about that, bringing the past into the present into the future.
Well, it's funny we're talking about this because we opened in a couple of weeks an exhibition that we titled Post-Columbian Futurism. And I think it has a lot to do with like what Virgil's doing, for instance, is sort of looking at how all of this stuff from the past and what we're making is going to somehow translate. And I think it's essentially an optimistic position to take because it's implying we have a future, which is pretty good already. But also it is, how did all this stuff, how does this melange and cultural mess that we are as a humanity look in the future? How do we perceive ourselves? And how do these images that, especially when it comes to iconography, how does that translate into possible readings now and, of course, past, present, and future?
Is this on? Do I have to do something? Oh, it's working. Hi. I think with my work, specifically the work that I do with light, I think a lot about the way that light travels across space and time. Speaking of the way our bodies are like time machines, our eyes are specifically like time machines because we're receiving the light and we're technically seeing an image of the past, like even from across the room, a split second in the past. And then, of course, the farther out we look into space, the farther back in time that image that we're seeing is. So I think about that a lot in terms of sort of bringing the past into the present. And then I think, for me personally, I think different people are like, either have 1 foot in the past or 1 foot in the future in terms of our orientation. And I think I am oriented towards the future, and I think my work naturally is as well, is sort of like, if everything we're seeing is from the past, we obviously can't see the future, but like, how can we orient ourselves towards it and, you know, try to imagine it, I guess.
I think that as an artist, I try to observe what's going on outside, whether it's a happy thing or a tragic thing. I always try to reflect that in my studio, and it's almost natural in that way. When Alicia talking about the, you know, women's rights movement in DC and all the pink, one of the pink painting, as you see, that's combined with yellow, and that's an odd color combination, but it was really natural that I was like, it is time for me to use the massive pink in my studio because I cannot go to DC. And, you know, I also saw the Twitter bird on Virgil's work, and I have a very similar way. And the design is, that time was like an old Twitter logo. Now it's a little bit different design. As evidence of what's going on in my studio in the future generation or audiences or even feeders we don't even know, they'll look at our work and study and then, oh, this is made in like 2022 or something like that because it reflects our current time. And I think it's artist's responsibility to reflect what's going on. And for me, like present is the most important, you know, I guess in timeline, I think about the present moment the most.
I think I'm lucky just because our people, our Koji pottery, it's timeless in itself because it's just black and white mainly, a little bit of red, but to be able to translate that and make it cool, because a lot of people didn't know about the pieces from the 1800s, all social commentary, not even Koji people knew, but to discover that, and it's pretty amazing to see how timeless those pieces are, but to try to translate it and now to work like with an AR or VR, right? It's like, how do I translate that to the next generation of how to get that type of demographic into museums now. Mm-hmm. So that's what my aim is to really, and I mean, I just try anything, any new medium. Whether or not I fail, but it's fun to try it anyways because you keep learning and to start using VR now. That's what I'm going to highlight over at the History Colorado Museum and to have like photography on the wall, and it's a cool photograph, but then you walk up to it with your phone and then it comes alive. So there are all these different types of ways that now like, okay, cool, I could, you know, without losing any retail space or in a museum, if you want to put a 20-foot tall bust that is scanned, maybe 4 feet tall, but then you can translate it into something really huge and levitating, and you know, you could see it and walk around it and take selfies with it. I think it's just like a way of how to translate and get a new demographic looking at your work.
No, thank you. And I think that especially with the exhibition, This Present Moment, I love watching visitors walk through the space because they get so surprised, right? Like when they see the neon work, when they see a lot of the glass work, you know, when they see just all the different materials, it really kind of makes them sort of understand the expansiveness that they maybe have not really seen in other museums or maybe seen in some of their studies. So it's really lovely to just watch people walk through the space and just have these wonderful moments with the pieces that are there. So thank you for talking more about that. Another thing that, so I'm a visitor to this place. I was not born or raised in Washington, D.C., so it's all very different for me. The whole landscape looks different. It smells different here. And so I was just wondering, when your work leaves the studio, it has another life. And so how do you think of your work in relationship to place, especially you can't ignore that your work is in Washington, D.C. And so if you could talk about that relationship to place and your work and how it does change, where it goes.
We always try to react to the places that we work in as residencies that we are in, be it slightly superficial because we don't spend a lifetime in the places that we're in. But of course, it's so loaded to be here. It would be sweet to do a residency here because I think we all have a lot that we want to say and express. And this is the center to express those feelings, yes.
And if I could add real quick, I think another angle too is that all artists from somewhere, and I think the artists are from somewhere. So we have a very strong attachment to where we think we're from, even though we're here for such little snippet of time. But we are somehow enamored, maybe romantically, with the idea of belonging. But the truth is that since we came from Mexico, we're Mexicans in Mexico, became American in the United States. To us, we learned quickly that identity was a very pliable thing, and that we could put on a hat, and we could be border, and we can be Chicano, and all those stories are layers in what might be your work. But I don't think may have a lot to do with the question is, the further you get away from that, the more didactic you have to say to explain some of the iconography you're using, because you no longer have the safe assumption that everybody knows what La Virgen de Guadalupe is, which of course is true in a great region, but not everywhere. So there's always the need for education to be attached to it as part of the viewing.
I think that I can piggyback a little bit more of that, because when I first came to the DC after graduate from University of Iowa, and I swear I was the only one wearing a color clothes. And in DC, everybody's wearing black or gray. And and as a painter who used color as a massive material, and I put a very heavy importance in it, and color combination, reference a certain time period or culture references. I mean, I try to embrace all of that, and the more I use color, sometimes the more I hear the criticism, and I welcome the criticism as well, but color is one of the things that I really enjoy, and I think that goes beyond like what the Latour brothers talking about iconography, and I want to add the color as well. Like it's a communication tool, generationally and culturally. And I think that art is absolutely free to use any of those in terms of like what they're trying to say, because I think it's our language.
It's pretty amazing. Like I had an experience when I did like maybe 5 or 6 shows in Europe, in Amsterdam, in Paris, and Prague, Milan. And all my work is based on educating about the 1680 Pueblo Revolt. All the Europeans knew exactly what I was talking about, but when I do shows in metro cities here in America, in New York and LA, they're like, what is the Pueblo Revolt? Where are you from? Are you part of Mexico? And like all these different questions. And when I do shows in Santa Fe, where most of it took place, they still don't understand or they don't know about it. So that's kind of embarrassing to admit, but it's the truth. So that's my mission, is to reach everywhere. But that's pretty amazing that Europeans know our history more than Americans do.
As you could see by my slides where I took this present moment to Mount Washington, actually like situating my work in different sites is a big part of my practice, because the context becomes like, it helps influence the work's meaning, and I do believe the words and the message sort of changes slightly from place to place. And I also think, in addition to being like site-specific for that brief moment in time, I'm also constantly thinking about things being time-specific. And that's a term that was coined by Tanya Bruguera, this idea of time specificity and the way that we as artists can actually participate in a political dialogue with our work. And situating this sign in Washington, D.C., it's been kind of incredible to watch how its meaning has changed over time. The day that Mary Savig shared on Instagram that it was going to be included in this show was actually the morning of January 6th. And, and it was this very celebratory, so excited to include this. And it was, I think, the day that two Black senators in Georgia were elected or something like that. So it was a very kind of celebratory moment. And then later that day, obviously, was a day that will go down in history for being absolutely horrible. So that one day alone kind of shows how the work changes so much over time. So yeah, that's something I'm very interested in.
No, thank you. And when I used to teach American history classes to college students, I would have to sort of prepare them because I would say it's a roller coaster. You think things are getting better and then something happens and then it goes down and then it goes up. And it is that kind of wave sometimes that you have to kind of, especially for younger folks, to kind of prepare them that you think you think you can stop fighting, but you can't. You have to keep on being so vigilant, especially, and paying attention to history. So thank you for that. I also wanted to ask, and starting with Alicia, about fragility, because especially that piece with Mount Washington, if you watch the video, it was very precarious getting it to there. And if something broke, you can't go to your studio and get it. So it was very much, talking about how, as an artist, and Virgil, you mentioned it too, about how you deal with, how do you come to terms with the fragility of what you make?
Yeah, so that specific trip up to Mount Washington, there's a little documentary video about it where I talk about how it was actually kind of a very stupid decision that I neglected to make, which is to not bring any backup neon on that trip. And the trip up the mountain and then installing the glass in that environment, it made the sense of possibility very fragile, right? And it's this is either going to happen and everything's going to work out, or it could immediately, be impossible because one glass letter could just crack. But I think that sense of sort of magic that is found in when it does work and when everything does go according to plan, and it is existing and flashing on and off on this mountaintop, it makes that sense of that possibility feel well, anything's possible, right? If this could happen. But I feel in my own work, the fragility of glass is something that I'm constantly struggling with. And I actually consider myself, I feel fortunate that my work is based on a pattern, and my neon bender, I work with someone in Texas named Amy Enlow to bend the glass. And I feel very fortunate. I'm constantly breaking things. I'm very clumsy. And she could always, I'm just hiring her constantly to remake things for me. So I'm not sure. The idea that you've spent months and months, Virgil, crafting something that could explode in a kiln, or, the De La Torre brothers, obviously, glass, one-of-a-kind pieces that probably couldn't be made exactly the same. I feel I am in awe of that kind of work.
I think we just become used to it, right? We're always aware of what could happen, how fragile our artwork is, but our bodies are also fragile, but also strong as hell. So we have to always remember that, we could recover from losing artwork and just never give up and just be persistent and stay there and keep on finishing it and keep on doing it. I mean, it just becomes a part of our our natural lives, I guess.
Yeah, for us, it's a terrible combination of heavy and fragile, which is really difficult for shipping. But I mean, you do need to let go, because anytime that you make something that is one idea, one concept, and you're away from it, there is a loss. If it's a complete loss, there is a loss of that idea, and all you have is the documentation of it. But there's a lot of work to do, so we get on.
I've been doing ceramic maybe over 10 years now, but I always feel like I'm the stranger for the community because I came from painter background, and this is a big celebration for, artisan craft, masterful, artists, and I feel like oddball here. But talking about fragility, I'm very humble. I like to collaborate with that fragile process, and using a kiln is amazing wake-up call, and nothing is under my control. The painting is not, under my control either, but it's happening in front of me, so I can see it. But I love the process. I almost see it as collaborative process with kiln, even if expectation that I have, it's not always the exact same. And then ugly things comes out, like ugly duckling. I look at it for long enough, and then sometimes I negotiate, maybe the way I understand the beauty is wrong to begin with, right? So I really love the process. One day I think the painting is really beautiful, and the next day I come back to my studio and I realize I was wrong, So it's a kind of negotiating process, and it's a way to collaborate with the, medium.
Maybe 80% or 90% is also crossing our fingers, saying prayers, crossing our toes too. It is.
And I would love to know more about how each of you spend time in the studio. So is it like for Einar and Hamex, I had no idea that you don't, I just assumed that you're always together, and so it was so educational for me to learn that, you are messaging with each other and sort of, so you do communicate, but you're communicating through different ways. So if you could, each of you talk more about how do you spend time in the studio? Is it, very structured time? Is it solitary time? Is it, playing music and just seeing what happens that day? How do you, really work with that time in your studio?
Well, we're not much for structure. So it's kind of an organic process, and recently we did a stint where we could spend 3 days in the studio together, and it's such a pleasure because that is the place where we belong. And the longer we are in our careers, the more we seem to need to spend in front of the computer for various reasons, having to do with the career. No complaint, it's part of the career, but it does keep us from the studio. So yeah, no, we coordinate our time. Our studio's in Mexico. My son's going to school in San Diego. So sometimes I go to the studio in Baja to work for a whole week, and my wife takes care of home. She's an artist as well, so I have to negotiate with her as well. The following week is her turn, and I try to match Einar's time there, or at least overlap it.
Yeah, and so when we are together, the good news is that then we can get quick affirmation as to when there's questions about the direction of a piece that matters. If it's just treatment, then we just do that on our own and we're not worried. But if it's a major shift or a directional thing, because sometimes we come up with titles and the titles actually shape the ending of the piece, so to speak. In other words, for us, process informs the outcome. Definitely, that's why we love craft. We want to be involved in making because of that. And so, and lastly, I would say that music is an art material for us. We use music to drive us, to move us, and there might be wine involved too.
Music is always around in my studio. I'm nocturnal, so in my vampire hours and in my clay cave, I always have it going. And it's like therapy as well, working with the clay, always praying, always, trying to concentrate on thinking about my people, talking with the spirits and listening, trying to get their messages. So it's very therapeutic. But yeah, definitely music, and maybe some wine too.
Well, my structure sounded simple in my studio, but it has to include family and my teaching job. So it's always juggling among many things. And I have one son who came to DC right now, wandering around somewhere with husband. But I also have a teaching job. So I actually try to embrace the interruption and admit that that's part of our life, and that is also a big source of inspiration. Otherwise, it's unbearable. So everything going on, and I try to do my best in my studio, which is a basement of my house. But as a woman and who also as a mother, I always try to remind myself there's a lot of greater artists, women artists and mother artists who accomplish so many different things and in a bigger way. And I always look up and just tell myself it's possible. And I also live in Atlanta, Georgia, which is kind of further out from the art center, like a big art cities in the state. But I also know that it's a game, long, like a marathon. You don't have to live in a big city to do things. And I try to actually, like, pandemic taught me so much. And I try to get by, like have a good day and a few hours good studio time. That's enough for a day. Sometimes before, have a family and my child, and I thought that I was spending 10 hours in my studio. Basically, I feel like I was just goofing around, maybe working hours like less than 2. Mm-hmm. So I think about that, like what time means in my studio. So it's really helpful when I admit that everything is okay and possible.
As I shared already, I'm a conceptual artist, so it's actually like for me to be included in this exhibition or to have my work acquired by the Renwick was a little bit bizarre for me at first, because I don't consider myself like a craft-based artist, although making is very much an important part of my process. A lot of my work starts by like reading and then writing and then kind of drawing on the computer plans for what the work will look like. And then my work is also very collaborative. As I said, I work with people who have expertise in areas that I don't. For example, my neon bender, Amy. Like it's very much like a conversational sort of process in terms of what is possible with materials that I don't physically have that sort of, decades worth of knowledge about. And that comes from my background in design, actually. I worked in the field of architecture for a while after college, and so kind of collaborating with engineers and architects and contractors to actually build work is what makes me feel really comfortable in these kinds of environments now where I don't always necessarily have my hands on everything. But a lot of my studio practice is actually like welding the steel frame that will, be the sign structure, or learning how to do electrical wiring so that I can actually power the work as well. Mm-hmm. So there's usually like a big sort of learning curve with every new project, and it's about finding the experts in that area that I can learn from in order to do those things, or working closely with them to sort of make my vision a reality.
Thank you. And in all of your talks, you also mentioned or touching upon visibility, and I thought about how, like, Jiha, when you were talking about the inclusion of fortune cookies, which people think are Asian, but really have nothing to do with, they're not a traditional Asian treat or cookie or anything like that, and then also thinking about, and the piece in the Renwick by the De La Torre brothers, this beautiful sort of this circle, but it's really based on indigenous calendars and counting systems, and so bringing more kind of like also visibility of, what is a Chicano, and it is so much of a little bit of everything, and with Virgil, with the 1680 Pueblo Revolt, and then also making sure that you're thinking about the future of your community, and what is going to be needed and wanted in 2180, and to make sure that people understand indigenous history is very much part, like as your shirt, made in Native America, right? That indigenous history is very much a part of what this place is, but sometimes doesn't always get talked about or mentioned, you know, and Alicia, with people not maybe at first understanding the pink color that's being used in your work, you know, and really sort of, so like, I love the idea of how you are making visible what may not have been talked about or may not have been taught to people. So if you wouldn't mind kind of talking to discuss that with all of us.
Well, fortune cookie first. I think that I really understand how powerful misunderstanding is in the communication form. I always say that, like, oh, I met somebody and then someone misunderstood me, and then it gave me bad taste in my mouth, and then I get like irritated. But because of that experience, that person get to know me better. And I always think that misunderstanding is one step further to understand somebody or a certain culture. And I'm trying to embrace that in my work conceptually. And I never want my work to be lecturish or didactic, because that's boring. When I start doing that, my son run away. So how do I introduce that in a more unguarded and friendly way? And you know, fortune cookie is one of them. And also, Blue Willow is designed by a British company, but it's widely collected to appreciate Asian exotic love story. But now it's part of the American culture, and I really, like, I feel like there's tons of other camouflage, like, you know, misunderstanding parts, you know, exist in American, you know, like a culture that we don't recognize as American, but we always see as others. And that I try to bring that, you know, to the point, like, you know, look, this is part of us. When you say American, what are you talking about? Like, you know, there's no such American, you know? So I actually love that idea. So trying to bring that more in my work in a very camouflaged way.
That's awesome. I mean, like my shirt that I'm wearing, right, I own the trademark to Made in Native America, and that's made for all, worn by all. And one of my missions is also, like, when I work with students, especially indigenous people, artists that are coming up, to make sure that they understand the legal part of their businesses, to protect their intellectual property, and to learn how to work with copyright, trademark, registered lawyers, of understanding how to protect what you create. Because a lot of indigenous people right now, it's all are being ripped off and plagiarized. So this is like part of my trademark that stands for, like, all of keeping the business here, all the manufacturing in the United States. So take for instance like a handbag. All of the materials that we use, down to the zippers, the feet, the rivets, they're all manufactured in the United States. The cut and sew people, the dye houses, the packaging, it's all made in Native America. But that's, you know, everybody, I mean, I'm sure you guys also think about protecting your intellectual property. That's like something we have to, most artists don't think about. But right now, like, especially with the social media, everybody has to know about it and learn how to protect their artwork. And I think that's one of the most important things that artists don't pay attention to. So I think it's worth bringing up.
Thank you.
I think, as you said about this present moment neon sign, I think it does make visible how color is political. And, you know, just the color pink, like when I was originally using it as a shout out to the Me Too movement, I also was trying to imagine a future where, like, pink wasn't associated with women and girls, right? And that my son wouldn't get made fun of by kids in school for wearing pink, right? And so yeah, I think it's like a really subtle move, and maybe most people wouldn't understand it to mean what it means. But yeah, for me, it was a very intentional choice. And yeah, all art is political as well, like whether or not we intend it to be, right?
On the subject of visibility and the border, I think the border, because of politics, gets reduced into a very narrow it's a political football, really. It has to do with immigration or blocking immigration. And I think since we are on both sides of the border and working, and yes, have the passports to both countries, we have always seen it as looking through the fishbowl, where we can see the other side, and therefore talk about it and joke about it. And we have agency within that whole nebulous region that is the border. But it also has to do with showing the amount of possibilities that are available when it's no longer the story of an immigrant that needs to cross the border only, when that is a story, that is part of it. And so is a million other stories that are as complex as you can imagine. So in the region of Tijuana, San Diego, there's people who live on one side and in the morning commute to the other side every day. And some of them are because for millions of reasons. And it isn't just people coming from Tijuana to work in San Diego. There's people who live in Chula Vista who go to work in Tijuana because they own businesses. It's very complex. There's a lot of voices involved in this. And I think that that's part of what we're interested in doing, is saying, just as complex as our own story is, there's a lot more stories. There's a lot more visibility that needs to happen in terms of these complex things that get narrowed down into such narrow political limitations as to how we view things. And identity is right through the whole intersection of the thing. Where do you see yourself, and how do you see yourself in terms of where you're planted, where your feet are planted, where you originally are from, and how this dynamism of the border region affects you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all of our artists here on the stage. Alicia Eggert, Jiha Moon, De La Torre Brothers, and Virgil Ortiz. We are now moving into the break portion. So thank you all, and just get something to eat, snack on, but be right back. We will.
Hello again, everyone. Thank you. Welcome back from the break. While everyone gets sort of filtered in, we will get started with the second segment of our program today, and we'll be starting with Sonya Clark telling us about what can we learn from a dishcloth. So Sonya, welcome up.
So good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. What can we learn from a dishcloth? We can learn that humble objects can become monuments for reconciliation, reparation, and reminders of the crucial work required of this nation to dismantle white supremacy, national terrorism, and their reverberating injustices. I encountered this humble dishcloth in 2010 at the National Museum of American History. A thoughtful curator included it in an exhibit of objects that shaped American presidencies. The thoughtful curator was none other than Dr. Lonnie Bunch, now the head of the Smithsonian, and the first African American to hold that post. I was drawn to Lincoln's top hat. In close proximity was this aged cloth, severed in half, and I wondered what had become of its other half. All white, save for a few red pinstripes, the label revealed that once, when whole, it was used as the truce flag that signaled the surrender of the Confederate Army at Appomattox, effectively ending the Civil War. Why, I asked, was this cloth not readily known in our collective conscience? What could I learn from it? What could I teach from it? I lived in Richmond, the former seat of the Confederacy, for a dozen years, and I've encountered this symbol more times than I can count. In 2015, which marked the 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War, our nation was in yet another chapter of its racial reckoning. We talked of taking down white supremacist monuments. And I recognized that among the most persistent of monuments were Confederate battle flags. While the surrender cloth had been taken apart and almost erased from our minds, this symbol of hate and oppression remained whole and prevalent, largely due to the propaganda of terrorist organizations like the KKK, and visual poison easily ingested in popular television programs like The Dukes of Hazzard. So I unraveled it, as you can see on the right. But the greater work was to invite others into the action. The first performance of unraveling took place just a few days before white terrorist Dylann Roof murdered 9 Black individuals. I reproduced this surrender of white supremacy with its sever sutured. It is, as David Hammond says, art that is both commentary and oath-taking. When the Fabric Workshop and Museum in Philadelphia asked me if I would do a project with them, the traveling exhibition, and I have props, monumental cloth, the flag we should know, came to fruition. Our exhibit, because it was a collaboration with the Fabric Workshop, asked, what if the truce flag was the symbol that had endured? Would our reconciliation be further along? Now we know of its existence, largely due to this collaboration. Will we commit to the promise of justice and equality? And most importantly, what must be surrendered for a true multicultural democracy to flourish? We ask these questions in the midst of modern-day lynching, mass incarceration, all while insurrectionists storm the Capitol with abandon. And so I ask you just to make a little asterisk in your head of the far red wall in this image. The cornerstone of the exhibition was monumental, a 100-scale version of the original artifact, measuring 15 by 30 feet, and is now housed at the Renwick as part of the Smithsonian's permanent collection. Its institutional proximity to its progenitor and to the White House, Monumental continues to ask questions of our progress and our collective responsibility. Again, note that far red wall. I wanted people to learn about the truce flag by making it. So we retrofitted school desks, laser etched them with the texture of the truce flag so people of all ages could make rubbings, draw in the red lines, and take them with them. Over 3,000 pieces were made in this manner. Reconstruction exercise invited people to weave the complex structure of the truce flag. Looms in the space. With guidance, the audience collectively constructs elongated versions. Each pass of weft across the warp, each glitch marks evidence of learning. The scrolled flags stretch from beyond their original of 18 inches by 3 feet to 18 inches by 27 feet, a measure of working collectively towards the goal of reparative justice. Over 1,100 people have participated in this project. Propaganda is a linguistic connection between text and textile. The text is present, but the textile is absent. It's a partial list of available Confederate flag merchandise, over 200 items, from yoga mats to baby onesies, and also dishcloths. So I bought a dishcloth and used it to clean a floor that was filled with dirt from the Declaration House and Independence Hall museums. It was a reversal. I washed the floor to reveal these words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, and the rest of that preamble. But the one thing that is self-evident in this country is that children, women, men, and non-binary people of every race, while created equal, do not have equal access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In this work, I sought to create tension by centering the work of a Black woman kneeling over and over again like Colin Kaepernick and cleaning. I am dressed as Ella Watson, the Ella Watson from Gordon Parks's famous American Gothic. Ella and Gordon both struggled in this racist nation. He became famous despite the oppression. She worked in the shadows of a federal building here in DC, not far from where we are now, until Gordon Parks took her photo in the 1940s and brought her into the light. He said, quote, "What the camera had to do was to expose the evils of racism by showing the people who suffered most under it. And so I made a monument to Ella." And so we have Colin kneeling for justice. We have Black workers cleaning up after the insurrection of January 6th. And just last Friday, neo-Nazis proclaiming a National Day of Hate. Where does this hate begin, people ask. And often, poisonous propaganda is served up tooth-rottingly sweet. So remember that red wall? It became the title wall, its color selected to match the red stripes in the truce flag. The closest match was Benjamin Moore. I ask you never to buy paint from Benjamin Moore again. The color was Confederate red. On the paint chip, which might be a little hard to read, Confederate red is sandwiched between cherry wine and raspberry truffle as if it's a delightful confection. This project calls out Benjamin Moore. And they've since renamed the color, but it's worse. Now it's Patriot Red, just like the insurrectionists, who rebrand themselves as patriots. But there is hope. I refuse to have despair. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Collectively, we persevere. We use history as a guide. We listen, look, and act. We are many. These are the things I've learned from a dishcloth, and I hope you have too, as we make a future together. Thank you, and I want to help me welcome to the stage Corey Alston.
What can you learn from a basket? You can learn durability, longevity, to handcraft. You can also learn sustainability. When you find baskets have been a part of our existence dating back to days of biblical time. Baskets has always been a part of our culture because it was used as utilitarian tools that were then used for this specific slide as baby Moses was pushed up the Nile River. Baskets are from different regions, from different times. Some people argue, are baskets necessity or are baskets art? In my state, I always feel like when the baskets are woven, you have a lot of stories that are told in the baskets. A lot of ladies are known for being basket weavers. I'm a little unique. I'm a basket weaver as well. My area that I weave from is from the Charleston, South Carolina area. We harvest grasses, we dry grasses, and we weave our artwork. Some may call it as a working tool. Then those may call it artwork. There, here in this slide, you also see that some people are also harvesting grasses as they made baskets for generations that had nothing to do with cultural reasons at all. It really just had to do with necessity, because they needed those baskets to work. I'm a fifth generation Gullah sweetgrass basket from the coast of Carolina. I live in the Mount Pleasant area. I'm a proud member of the Gullah culture. The traditions that we're keeping alive in my area are passed from parent to child. Due to the transatlantic slave trade is what made my area so unique. The enslaved African free labor that was done in the area was done because it was free labor. They worked those enslaved people. They had them harvesting, gathering, cleaning raw rices. Rice became the #1 cash crop of my area. It is what fueled Charleston to be the richest city. This piece down here in front of me is known as a rice fanner basket. Fanners were used during days of enslavement for separating the rice from the chaff. known as a winnowing style basket. It's considered traditional within the culture that we keep this style alive. Raw rice was used because it was a crop that was used for trading and bartering. As you had the rices, you would then trade those rices down to the south, to the Caribbeans for sugarcane. They'll trade that sugarcane up to the north for whiskeys. The trading circle was from rice to sugarcane to whiskeys. That circle went on for many generations. The area that I live in is known as the Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor. Within the corridor, you're going to find different things that makes my culture unique. We stretch of 4 states. We stretch from Jacksonville, Florida to Jacksonville, North Carolina. The coastal community is about 1 county inland from the ocean. Due to the transatlantic slave trade, Charleston, South Carolina, was the largest slave port of America. Then Boston was discovered. As you see this here, the image that I have here is going to actually be a street sign. The street sign goes along Highway 17, just like if you found it in Georgetown or Jacksonville or Wilmington or Mount Pleasant. Highway 17 is the artery that has kept our culture connected. As different parts of our area are known for different traditions has kept alive, baskets would be Mount Pleasant. You then have language, more the dialect of the Gullah people, be more of the Charleston Peninsula area. Around the Brunswick, you have more of the raking of the clams and oysters. Around the Pawleys Island area, you have more hammocks and cast nets being made. Collectively, we're one group, one people. The way this skill set is kept alive is by passing from parent to child only. You'll see here, this is one of my daughters. She's a 6th generation basket maker within the family, and that's how it's kept alive. By only showing the next generation. I don't give classes. We don't teach it out of the bloodline. We don't order material on Amazon. I don't ship in anything that's overseas. It's all done within our state. With that being said, sweetgrass baskets are known as the South Carolina State Handcraft. We're very proud to be a part of it and keeping it alive. They're properly known as the culture keepers of our existence, and they're known as the ladies. Ladies have been known and recognized, and we give all the credit to the ladies because they have kept the sweetgrass basket lifestyle alive for over 300 years. As that enslaved man was pushed out for harsh labor, the ladies then stayed closer to the homestead, weaving the baskets during that days of enslavement by the big house, and then showing from mother to daughter or from grandmother to granddaughter. A lot of women are still basket makers. What makes us unique is me, specifically. I'm unique. I'm a guy. Guys are not known for Gullah basket making. There's a small group of us that are basket makers. That small group of men, all of us are pretty much in this slide right here. So I always like to word it. If you want to see the real deal basket makers of Charleston, South Carolina, they're the ladies. Us guys, we have been allowed to be a part of this skill set. Now, men have always been gatherers and dryers and cutting of the raw material, but prior to that, ladies are the ones that's kept it alive. If you came to my small town of Mount Pleasant, you find those little basket stands along the highway. Those basket stands are still there. They're our town monuments. So as a new business goes there, McDonald's or a bank or a hospital, it goes behind the stand because those stands are considered our landmarks of our area. The way that the materials were harvested for other cultures, lifestyles, and ways of living is the same way our materials are harvested. We harvest at low tide, we let it sun dry, then we can weave with it. We don't have a supplier once again. So by using these harvested materials allows us to have the 4 different colors that we use. If you look in the centerpiece of this basket that I have here, the center is the longleaf pine needle, the lighter grass is the sweetgrass, the darker brown is that biblical grass I was telling you about, known as bulrush, and then we use our state tree, known as the palmetto tree. Every basket is hand woven, 1 stitch at a time. Based on the quality of the artwork will be based on how tight we can pull it. At one time, sweetgrass baskets were known for holding water. So as you're shopping for them, you still want to make sure they're nice and tightly woven. You'll find baskets back in the city market, Highway 17. You'll also find them down on the Broad Street area. A part of the Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor are some very famous people that have been known and recognized, and you'll see them here in this slide. You may recognize a lot of these people. They are Gullah. Being Gullah is going to be a proudful thing that we choose to keep alive. Collectively, everyone is all woven together. Thank you. I want to next bring up Miss Susie Ganch.
Hi, everybody. It is so awesome to be here. I am absolutely humbled by all of these presentations. I don't know about all of you, but thank you for allowing me to be with this distinguished group of artists and friends. Okay. I need my notes, and I can't read with my glasses on. I divide my art practice between independent studio work and collaborative work. Collaboratively, I direct Radical Jewelry Makeover, or RJM, which is a traveling community jewelry mining and recycling project that is both performance and event, linking recycling, reuse, and collaborative work sessions with the creation of unique, innovative handmade jewelry. The project creates a circular, transparent supply chain as an example of how we might do things differently. This project has been informing and influencing my practice since 2007 when I started it. So when asked to speak about what we might learn from a plastic lid, I could not help but think of all of the materials I've handled that have been mined from people's jewelry boxes. What is cast off and unwanted reveals so much about us as a society. Reflecting on shifting cultural trends, tastes, and economic value helps me find compassion and manage grief for the choices that we are making. These materials guide me as I find solutions that satisfy both my studio values and my environmental values. So in my studio, I use trash, found material, and things given to me. It feels better to use what is already here and adds a whole new layer of meaning that is vital to my work. So what happens when these pieces are no longer important or relevant? I design them specifically so that they can be taken apart, separated, and recycled, or what can't be recycled, as in much of the plastic junk, thrown away, even though we know that there is no away. The things that I collect from my local or Instagram community tie me physically to the world outside my studio, and they serve as a record and reminder of our collective habits of consumption. This tapestry is from the Pile series and is 8 by 10 feet. The Pile series of tapestries all depict different oceanic current systems from used coffee lids. Remember Me, Katrina, for example, follows the currents of the Gulf of Mexico. It was made as a memorial on the 10-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Pile has a double meaning. On the one hand, it is an obvious heap or accumulation of trash, while on the other hand, pile is the reference to the creation of tufts or loops of yarn in a tapestry. From a distance, these pieces might initially draw someone in because of the mystery of the material and what is being seen. They're meant to be beautiful from far away. Up close, the coffee lids are dirty and covered with coffee stains, chocolate, caramel, and lipstick. Each lid was touched by a different set of lips, again, signifying our commonality and complicity in this wonderful and yet terrible world. Materials are embedded with their own story, wisdom, and knowledge. I rely on this when I choose my materials. And then it must be stated that these pieces really begin when I start collecting. Relying on my community is important. If I can't get the materials, I can't do the piece. And there is an obvious push-pull with this need and reliance. On the one hand, I dread getting this material, and on the other, I'm relieved to fulfill a purpose. Fields of Plenty is an idealized landscape made from plastic bags, memorializing a hike through Basque Country in Spain. The materials I love working with have a lifespan based on exposure to light and air. Plastic bags might live up to 20 years before they begin to transform, crack, and break down. This means that this landscape will eventually crumble, adding a whole new layer of meaning and metaphor. It has become one of my studio values that when I leave this world, my work might be ready to leave too. In this way, my philosophy is non-legacy driven, meaning that what I make will not necessarily endure to be passed down to future generations. This image is titled Bale. Bale has two meanings. The first and obvious one is that it means to bundle materials by tightly wrapped bound cords or hoops. The second meaning comes from the origin of the word, which is from Old English and means great evil or sorrowful woe. Another ongoing series uses used single-use shopping bags to build tapestries of emoji and symbol sentences. This piece is 6 feet tall by 2 feet wide. The blue color is New York Times newspaper delivery bags. Another form of landscape, these large-scale hand-tufted shredded tapestries explore solastalgia, or eco-anxiety in the stages of grief related to climate change. I also consider what plastics might have to say in all of this. I wonder if it shares my opinions and if it is pleased with the voice or agency that I'm giving it. After all, it will be part of the fossil record in the future. Spending so many hours with this environmental adversary, I understand that plastic is an unmatched utilitarian material and see myself as both an advocate for and against the items that we conveniently and honorably throw in our recycle bins. Necklace for a narwhal whale is 12 feet long and constructed out of my lid collection and couched with old faux pearl beads. In a forest ecosystem, nurse logs provide protection, nutrients, shade, and water to seedlings that are growing. As these fallen trees decay, they help the next generation of trees. In landscape number 3, my nurse logs are used water bottles that have twined single-use plastic shopping bags covering their surfaces. A tender gesture of protection, the coating is also hopeful and beautiful. Drift is a sound sculpture. Over a rolling din of man-made sound recordings, birdsong chirps across the clouds. Made from the ubiquitous text tweet sound, I twisted, stretched, and flipped it into a new species of bird, familiar and yet not real. My point with this piece is to talk about our mediated existence and our divorce from nature. We can recognize the sounds from our phones, but have lost the ability to name the trees, plants, and birds in our local surroundings. Sounds that guided us and gave meaning to the world around us for millennia have been replaced. Instead, from a distance, the whirl of traffic highway sounds remarkably like the sound of waves crashing on the beach. And melodic bird calls that once asked only that we listen can now be reminders of meetings and birthdays. All of this is remarkable to me, and I'm trying to come to grips with it by making. This is a 32 by 6 foot 3-dimensional mural. It was made for the Children's Museum in Madison, Wisconsin, for their new Wonderground interactive space. Taking my inspiration from water again, this piece offers the view looking up at the sky from below the water's ripples. This piece was made from 7,200 bottles. Based on recycling statistics from Dane County, Wisconsin, it takes 20 minutes for the citizens of Madison to throw away this many bottles. Every 20 minutes, 24 hours a day. Using their own caps or lids, all of the bottles were screwed to polycarbonate sheeting, which is made from the same material as the bottles. This means that when this piece is no longer relevant or wanted, it can be taken to the recycling center as is. Again, when I'm ready to leave, maybe my work will be ready to go too. Thank you, and now it is my pleasure to invite Carla Hemlock up to the stage.
I'm nervous. So I was asked, what can we learn from a quill? And I call this In the Arms of the Natural World. The following work that I will present are photos of a multimedia installation that includes 3 quilts and 2 films. This is my response to the unmarked mass graves of our children that never made it home from Canadian residential and U.S. boarding schools. In May, sorry. In May of 2021, the remains of 215 children were discovered in unmarked mass graves on the site of a formal residential school in Kamloops, BC. Since that time, sites are continuously being uncovered right across Canada. The Canadian government was pressured to take responsibility and acknowledge the role that they played in trying to extinguish us. The center features a spiral within the outline of a turtle. For Haudenosaunee people, we refer to North America as Turtle Island. The turtle represents indigenous lands of North America. Encircling the turtle are children dressed in ribbon shirts and ribbon skirts. This is a nod to their traditional clothing. The orange color is symbolic for the children that attended residential schools. Many are still alive today, living with the effects of these institutions. As a message from our mother, the earth, the lettering on this quilt reads, "Holding you tight until you are found." Throughout the quilt, hand quilted, are dragonflies that surround the children. For Indigenous people, we know what this means. Within the head and the legs of the turtle are photographs of moccasins. These moccasins are within my personal collection. I took them into my yard, I buried them, and I had them nestled into the natural world, and I photographed them. These represent what was stripped from our children and disposed of. These also include the stripping of our languages, our culture, our stories, our songs, our very existence as Ngwehongwe people to be human beings. On either side of the center quilt are these two. Canada, 1831 to 1997, 139 Indian residential schools, government funded and operated, church run. The quote on there says, "The final solution of our Indian problem." Duncan Campbell Scott, Department of Indian Affairs, 1910. The first school opened in Brantford, Ontario. Mohawks, our people, were the first experiment. The last to close was in 1996 in Saskatchewan, and 1997 in Nunavut. The USA, 1860s to 1969, 408 Indian boarding schools, government funded and operated, church run. I also should have put military run. The quote is "Kill the Indian, save the man," from Captain Richard H. Pratt, 1892. The ribbons hanging on this one that says USA is a mix of orange and black. In the Canadian quilt, the ribbons are all black. The black ribbons represent the mourning period, which we are going through right now. And it also is the continued efforts to to locate the thousands of missing children that never made it home. The orange ribbons in the U.S. quilt represents the children of these boarding schools. To this day, the U.S. government has not taken responsibility for the damage that was done to us. In 2022, as I stand here talking, I am not supposed to be here. Indigenous people were not supposed to be here for 2022. Their experiment failed. I took archival photos of children that attended the schools, and they are embedded in the quilts. In here are part of the buildings. And on all of these quilts, I put no color and I left them in black and white. Carlisle, Pennsylvania School operated from 1879 to 1918. And children were shipped from throughout the United States and brought here. My husband's grandfather was in Carlisle. Between the quilts are 2 films that I collaborated with my son, Carla Hemlock. They are 2 10-minute videos that play simultaneously between the quilts. One video represents Canada and the other represents the United States. These films explore the sites and the landscapes of former residential and boarding schools. Shown through the 4 seasons, they include all of the elements of our natural world that has been caring for our children. They represent the thousands who are still buried in these unmarked graves. These locations are from the north to the south, the east, and the west, throughout Turtle Island. The 2 films are told through a pair of eyes. On a side note, my son, when he was producing them, came to me and said, I don't know what's going on. All that's happening when I'm putting these films together is a pair of eyes keep forming and I can't take it out. I said, well, maybe you need to keep them in. And he did. So he formed them into eyes, and they act as eyes simultaneously being played. So when I asked him, I said, what do these eyes mean to you? Why do they want to stay in? And he says, these eyes represent the energy and the essence of the universe. He said, these are the eyes that have been keeping watch, and they bear witness to what was done to the original peoples, to our peoples. They're keeping watch over those children until they're found. If this work can serve any purpose, I hope that it can open the viewer to ask more questions, or maybe, just maybe, lend your voice to Deb Holland, who I understand is trying her best to get the government to acknowledge what has happened, and to maybe pressure the government to accept the responsibility and to begin the process of locating all of our children still in unmarked mass graves, because they need to be returned home to our communities.
Good afternoon. My name is Margarita Cabrera. Thank you to the Smithsonian team and to all of you for being here. I'm a Mexican-born artist living and working in the US now for more than 30 years. I promote artistic productions in platforms that are open and empower individuals and immigrant communities to help define our place and our voice in the social cultural dialogues evolving around us. What can we learn from a cactus? As a symbol of resistance and tenacity in a desert landscape, cacti exist in a place of endless time, a place that holds a personal and collective memory, where culture resonates, and it's a place of becoming and a place for letting go. Cacti in a desert landscape are symbols of unity between two countries that embody knowledge dating back to a millennia, a wisdom that transcends borders and over time has shaped the cultural and geographical collective identity of all who have lived and experienced life in the desert. As an immigrant and a fronteriza myself, having lived for more than 30 years in the desert in the borderlands of El Paso and Ciudad Juarez, I find strength in the constant state of flux and hybridity found in the borderlands, which pushes me to question my understanding of place. Where does the beginning and end of a place and distance truly exist? What grounding points can really define where I am, where I'm going, where I come from, where I'm going? I see our attempts today to find meaning in the cactus or the desert landscape similar to finding meaning in the unconsciousness of our lives. In that space in between, Gloria Ansaldúa called Nepantla in her book Borderlands, La Frontera. Ansaldúa wrote about Nepantla as an alternative space, a reference to living in the borderlands and the crossroads where marginalized cultures create resistance strategies of survival. Ansaldúa's work inspired me to see Nepantla as a place where ritual resistance, transformation, and change can happen. The space between cultures, between language, objects, breaths, and heartbeats. The image here shows an installation in the middle of the space that I'd like to refer to. It's at the Magne Art Museum in San Antonio. This project is titled Space in Between. It is a community collaboration that exists in the form of a sewing and embroidery workshop that presents an unromantic but truly realistic artistic depiction of the borderlands in terms of its true and honest portrayal of our times created by immigrants, about immigrant histories, and for their empowerment. The first run Space in Between workshop took place in early 2010 at Box 13 in a former sewing Singer machine showroom in Houston's East End, where a lot of Spanish-speaking immigrant communities reside. Over the years, immigrants from Mexico and Central America have shared their borders crossing stories and participated in the creation of sculptural replicas of desert plants indigenous to the Southwest, such as agaves, prickly pears, cactus, saguaros, and many more. Sometimes as novice and other times experienced sewers, reclaiming old learned techniques, immigrants sew their personal border crossing story experiences and combine these designs on the surface of the sculptures. They're sewn together with Border Patrol uniforms and planted in traditional Mexican terracotta pots. These sculptural plants embody immigrant histories as temporary, transportable, and uprooted commodities. The use of the uniform fabric presents the role of Border Patrol officers as both a protagonist and antagonist in the American landscape. The physical qualities of the work present the manual labor of its making as part of the work's significance, presenting anthropomorphic soft sculptures that seem to be losing structure, present threads like hair, and forms that are made up of exhausted cut-up shapes, inviting the audience to confront their own body and life's fragility. As visual artists, we naturally work to transform materials and create new forms with them. For this project, Space in Between, the Border Patrol uniform is our main material. To some people in American society, the uniform represents a sense of safety, security, control, power. But to others, it represents something totally different: uprootedness, violence, family separation, and death. My interest has been to bring these communities together that have the different perspectives into dialogue and to work together to deconstruct and transform this uniform fabric material into shapes that represent something new, such as growth and flourishment, such as nature, such as life. This nation was built by immigrants, hardworking people who have overcome incredible challenges and are making a real difference in their community. Space in Between invites diverse communities to build a more in-depth relationship and understanding and acceptance of who we are, so we can start negating unfounded fears about immigrants that we hear in the media. This picture shows a Space in Between community, participants of this project from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Casa San Jose community. These communities made up of teachers, engineers, technicians, college students, artists, and more. Uplifting their immigration stories empowers them in the larger Pittsburgh community to be further supported and within their own immigrant communities as they are celebrated by cultural organizations such as the Carnegie Museum of Art and larger institutions as well. Young children are proud of their siblings, their parents, their grandparents. They look up to them for their sacrifice, for their creative expression. This brings spiritual, emotional well-being to immigrant communities who are healing from various traumas and provides affirmation that they are seen, they are also supported by American society. This next work is a piece created in Houston with a community that used different parts of the uniform, including the red shirt to represent the flowers. These are recycled t-shirts used by Border Patrol trainees. Space in Between employs the power of story. We know inequality and injustice breaks down to individual stories, stories that allow us to listen, understand, and see ourselves as the community we are collectively. We also live in a time of misinformation, many untold stories, and negative false rhetoric that have caused great division amongst our communities. We see that stories can kill, and as well as they can save lives. Examples of this work come from North Carolina communities, from a bilingual school study group. On the upper left side of this slide, you can see some of the symbols represented. Upper left side, the beginning of a Mexican flag that's been mapped out, representation of a country, of Mexico, with the green and white and eventually red thread. On the upper right, various symbols of flora and fauna that are encountered along the immigration path. On the lower right, symbols of a family unity and the importance of family roots, bloodlines embroidered on the palms of the hands. And on the lower left, you see an image of a semi-trailer, a container full of immigrants standing up. Some of them that have passed are shown horizontal on the floor, and towards the top of the image, two figures supporting each other as they reach for air. This work was made by participants in 2014 in Charlotte, Carolina. And yesterday in San Antonio, there was a vigil, a mass remembrance dedicated to those who died last year in June, when a tractor trailer similar to this one, filled with immigrants, was abandoned with no air, no water, and left in the very hot heat of Texas in the middle of the summer. 53 people died in this smuggling incident. This depicts another part of an immigration story depicting La Bestia, the freight train of violence and assault that transports immigrants fleeing the country who could not afford a bus ticket or a smuggler and are confronted with most brutal, controlled, organized crime. Migrants experience accidents and body mutilations when they fall off the train, and those that remain to stay on the train or manage to They experience extortion, forced illegal drug smuggling, sexual rape, harsh violence, and death. Similar to the art of protest, this space in between project documents and denounces the oppression and the inhumane treatment of immigrants by a first world country offering no acceptable legal pathways for immigrants with merciless policies like Title 42 that are put into place by our past administration, literally killing people every day who are forced to cross the desert. Denying asylum and building walls and deportation and detention and more immigration employment are not the answer. We need an immigration plan that is humanitarian and that is long-term thinking, respecting the lives and dignities of those who need to migrate. An artistic community that works creatively can take political social issues and present them in different ways with the hope of inspiring change, acceptance, and new ways of thinking. Our Space in Between project about relationship and stewardship is only possible with the goodwill and support of cultural and educational institutions that are willing to create art that questions and explores our contested history of systematic racism and inequality, and acknowledges that these dark colonizing histories have been central to the formation of this nation and must be uprooted. Our space in between communities share their stories through a fiber process, their fears, their hopes, their concerns, when the public becomes then a testament to extraordinary strength and survival through the tremendous hardship, indignities, suffering, and loss. Indifference and inhumanity, hatred and hostility can be opposed by creative acts of compassion, empathy, kindness, and stewardship. The arts as a tool for social change are one way to make a difference. For over 13 years, I have worked to present America's immigration experience in community, in collaboration, and with the representation of all who are involved in this work and represented in this work, we create sculptural cacti forms that represent endurance, tenacity, and the strength in the face of adversity. Our desert warriors, cacti, desert warriors, that while they know of the quiet heartbeat and tranquility of ranching and agriculture borderlands, they also witness Mexicans who historically had their land stolen along the borderlands. Desert warriors experience the violent environmental scars of the steel border wall and incarcerated immigrants in detention centers and inhumane treatment of our immigrant communities. Desert warriors live the fierce and scorching heat, the desperate thirst of the borderlands, and they know about extractive industries, about global warming, about the conquest. They know about slavery, they know about Native American genocide and gender violence. Until we are able to say that all individuals and immigrant communities find themselves truly included in American society, stitch by stitch, the Space in Between project will continue to sew our national immigration story, inspiring a shift in the way we see ourselves, collectively creating opportunities for regeneration of new truths and histories, and to engender more positive, imagined landscapes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We all need to take a breath after that those incredible presentations. And we want to thank Sonya Clark, Corey Alston, Susie Ganch, Carla Hemlock, Margarita Cabrera, who will be joining us here on stage. My name is Diana Bearden-Jai. I'm a senior curator at the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage and director of the African American Craft Initiative. I'm also an artist and am total fangirl and in awe of these incredible artists. I'm blessed to be, or we are all blessed to be on the land that is sacred and stewarded by Piscataway and Pamunkey, as well as other people, on land that has lives that lived, blood spilled, tears shed by African American and immigrant people in this land. I honor the anonymous craft persons that build this edifice where we find ourselves at this present moment. So I'm going to ask if you could all join us here. And they've all been talking about, what we can learn from a basket. We all learn from objects that we see, make, or use, but needless to say, we also learn from each other, from people alive or passed on to the land of the ancestors. This present moment is something that we are here now, whether this is an oasis, whether this incredible exhibition is an oasis or the beginning of a landscape that will go for many years, is what we're hoping to see. Thank you. So we're going to do this a little differently. What I want to do is ask each of our panelists and presenters here to respond to one of the things that they heard during the presentations of the other artists here on this stage right now, that either resonated with their work or actually startled them because it was something that they hadn't considered. And I'm going to start to asking to my immediate left.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Margarita Cabrera.
Okay. I think something that startled me, something that has surprised me, pleasantly so, has been just the really goodwill and sort of positive spirit of this group and of this exhibition in general, and all the amazing intentionality that goes into the work that has been presented. I'm really amazed that there's, in the work that we do that centers on social justice efforts, there's so much sweat, blood, and tears that go into the making of this work that doesn't always show up in the art itself directly, and it goes unseen or unknown. And I'm humbled by that, because all of us do so much of this work, and it's a beautiful thing to see happening on stage. So I'm grateful to all of you. Social work, social justice work is ever evolving because history is always unfolding. And so I just, thank you, and I thank all the curators as well, because doing this type of work is important. Opening up the platform for these types of messages and subjects to be presented is not easy. It takes a lot of, cojones, como decimos en español. But it's like, I think what makes art interesting today, what makes art contemporary and innovative in the times that we're living, which are very dark, challenging times. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Carla?
What was the question? No, I can't really single out any one person to ask a question, because everyone that presented here this afternoon and earlier today, I learned something off everyone. There was something that was said by every single person that presented that I didn't know. The artwork that I saw just moved me. There were times that I felt very emotional looking at some of that work, and knowing that people are actually spending so much time working on something and then it just disintegrates in front of them. That was something for me to have to take in, like, oh my gosh. So there's not really a question for anyone, more of, I just want you to know how much you move me with your work. I think it's important. And for me, art will move you.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
So thank
really
you.
all that I have to say.
Yes, for saying that. And what we wanted to ask actually was also what resonated. Was there any particular one that resonated with you, particularly you, in terms of the work that you're doing? I guess you've said it. You've said it. You've said it. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Corey?
I want to say, so there's a two-part question. And the first part of the question is, what did I take from it, or what did I, notice from this coming together? And I look at the curators on this topic, how they strategically put these 10 artists together to tell their cultural story, either in saving our world by collecting plastics or bringing the awareness of our ancestry, our days of racism on both sides of me. My story being a native story of the Gullah people based on the transatlantic slave trade, the brother's story from Mexico, the Native American story. I mean, they strategically put this panel together, and I want to applaud them for that, because the stories that we're discussing has a lot of times been forgotten, and so I want to thank y'all for that. What I have taken from the second part of the question is what has moved me personally is me being a cultural keeper of my community, keeping the knowing of the Gullah community alive by presentation and by my artwork. I also see that from to the right of me. I appreciate you keeping your Native American story alive, and then you keeping your Latino story alive. And so as those are culture keepers is what they are called. And so when you're a culture keeper, you're not doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for highlighting of your own personal gratification. You're doing it for the community. You're doing it for your people. And I love that. And that's what I take from this today.
Thank you. Sonya.
So I too am deeply honored to be here and a little emotional. So the ancestors are with us. And one of the things that was resonating with each of the presentations, not only from our panel, but from this morning today, is there was a conversation about precarity, like some of it was in the work, literally. And I'm also thinking about that in the context of endurance. So I'm realizing our responsibility, like this deep responsibility that we have. I'm so emotional. I'm usually not that way. Our deep responsibility that we have to one another, to those who have gone before us, and to those who are coming next. and how our artwork, each one of us, is recognizing that and doing the work of that charge. And how powerful art is as a tool to do that. And I suppose I'm emotional right now just because I'm in this space with these workers of culture, ideas, materials, activism, and your deep commitment and endurance just touches me deeply, obviously. So let's move on.
Thanks for making us laugh.
Susie.
Yeah, I kept thinking about the
Susie
word
Ganch.
responsibility the whole time. And then when Margarita ended, was the last person, and was using the word warrior. I felt so grateful to hear the word warrior, because all of these simple materials that we're using are doing so much. My heart was broken today. I felt intense pride today, and I felt rage today, right? And these simple materials are doing that with your wise hands. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional too. You know, there's so much wisdom. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I saw the exhibition yesterday at length, and I couldn't believe the immense wisdom in the space. And then hearing it from the lips of the artists today was so amazing. And so the word warrior is sticking with me in such a fierce way, that these simple materials are fierce and say so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I have another question, and I'm going to repeat what you said, Sonya, that I'm a lazy moderator because I'm going to ask each of these wonderful artists, and I'm going to start this time with you, Susie, and then come back. If you have a question for either someone on the panel or all of the folks on the panel that you'd like to ask.
I have an itchy question that I'm looking at Corey, because, well, this will be a lighter note. How's that? Just bring it up. Corey, how did it happen that men were allowed to make baskets? Because it sounds like a new thing, and it sounds like a handful of men, and I was curious about how that shift took place in the culture, in your culture.
It shifted based on the free will of having your career to what you want it to be, no longer being made to do a service or a job or a forced labor of what what our enslavers made us to do. So within the Gullah community, we now are making choices, and those choices are now choosing to be artisans. If you chose to drive truck or you chose to be a brick mason, that handful of men, they have chosen to pick up the culture and keep their culture alive.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I asked the next question. All right. So, panel, are we artisans because we feel like we have a job to keep something alive, or are we artisans within our own skill because we enjoy what we do?
Well, that's familiar.
Well, Sonya, since Corey asked this question, Sonya, you...
Some version of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why don't you start out?
Okay, so artisans because we enjoy it, or? I'm just asking him to repeat that. Can you repeat what you said on the mic?
So that are we artisans that we enjoy what we do, so that's why we're doing it, or do we feel that it's an obligation to keep our skill set alive as the artisans that we are?
So I enjoy difficult work. Art is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Or I should say that I find purpose in it. I find purpose in the community that is built around the work, and the community that is built around the audience. You know, many of the works that I showed today were about work that happens in evident collaboration, but I would even say, you know, works that are individual are also in collaboration. And the reason that I say that is that I have the enjoyment of knowing that my hands are both my mother's and my father's and my grandfather's and my grandmother's. And that means that they are present with me when I am making and conceiving, right? Because this body is not mine. This body is all those people that came before me, right? And so that responsibility, there's joy in knowing that they're there with me. What are we going to do together? Great-great-grandma, who I never met, you know, what are we going to do together? So there's joy in that community, even though the work itself might require us to mine the archive for the stories that are not told, to redress history, to make invisible lives visible, all of that, which is not enjoyable, but to find the ancestors' presence in all of that, to leave the story better than we found it, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Margarita, how would you answer that question?
Okay, thank you. Oh, well, I guess I will share that. I'll start with a quote that I think about a lot by Bertolt Brecht, who's a playwright, a German playwright, who said, and I may, forgive me if I don't say it right, but art is like a mirror that reflects our society, but also a hammer with which to change it. And I guess when you realize that as artists, we have a privilege, and we can leverage that privilege to uplift communities around us, to talk about important social issues that are resisting, that are oppressive, then you realize that you have the power to transform environments, then you have a very important job. And that job is not easy. The job is the job of social justice is constantly being resisted in ways that are unmeasurable. And so, but understanding that at the end you are doing work that's making a difference is, you know, so it's not that you enjoy it, but you have a purpose, and there's no way to make art about a beautiful landscape anymore, or a sunset, or, you know, there's no room for that right now in these times, right? Yeah. And I work to represent a lot of people in my work together, right? So the work that I showed is made to uplift communities, but not just culturally and emotionally and spiritually, but also economically. And so the work enters these platforms, museums, universities, you know, are showcasing work, and in doing so are not just uplifting the subject of immigration and the history of immigration, but those people represented in the work. And that's why we keep working, because they're not accepted in society yet the way we should all be. We all have the right to be accepted and treated as human beings, so we keep working.
Thank you. Now, do you have a question for Carla?
Yes. I have a question for everybody, and I just want to, because you are putting me in conversation with Carla, I really respect the work you're doing and honor your efforts and your communities. I think there are some common struggles that we all share in our histories, and I hope that we can learn more ways to be able to support what you are doing as an artist community. But my question to everybody, if that's okay.
Well, we have about 5 more minutes.
And she can start the answer. The question is, the work you showed in your slides is very important. What is the next work you are creating, and what is the next project that everybody is working towards that may have been is an extension of what you're doing now or inspired by the work that you presented? What's next for you?
Well, this one, this work that I showed, it took a long time. And I started it right when the news had come out from BC, when they started to uncover the mass graves. It was probably the heaviest work that I've done so far. There was a lot of research. The research is just not pretty. But you want to put it in a way where people are not going to turn away, that people want to look, that people want to watch these films, that people want to ask the questions. So for me, it was hard to try and figure out how to put this in a very delicate way, because this whole residential and boarding school is just not a pretty subject. For the next work that I'm working right now, I actually want to work on something really pretty. And I am. It's still going to have a theme with the earth, with the Turtle Island, but it's not going to be this heavy.
Thank you. Well, this is an incredible panel, and before we open it up to the larger group and ask everyone else to come up, we just want to thank you so much for this. And
And I'd like to invite back Anya and Alicia and Einar and Hamex and Jiha and Virgil to join the rest of the group. For those of you online, if you're a subscriber to our YouTube channel, you can put a comment in the chat. For those of you here in the auditorium with us, you should have a comment card in your printed program. Please submit any questions to that and then hold it up and I'll come and collect them.
people are going to come. So for the next section, we're hoping that you will have some questions for the artist, and Anya and I are going to read what people have put on their comment sheet or their question sheet, and I hope that you've all taken the opportunity to look at it and write out either comments or questions. Thanks. Okay. Oh, are we still? Oh, okay. That's right. Okay. I have a mic and we have a mic. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll ask the first question. This is for Virgil. Can you talk about how education plays a role in viewing your work, especially for future generations? Thanks.
Yeah, definitely education plays a huge role in what I do, just because a lot of people don't know about our history. And like listening to everybody else on the panel, I mean, that's wide open. I mean, that opened my eyes to a lot of different subjects, to recycling, to other, you know, the children of Native American, the big graves. Art says a lot, and if you look at it through an education point of view, there's a lot to learn.
Thank you. Yes. And I think Anya is going to ask the next question. That was.
Do we want to answer about AI? I have an AI question. Anyone? So with AI so prevalent in the world and digital fabrication of ceramics being given space at, let's see, would either of the artists or the curators speak to any of this controversy? So digital fabrication or AI in the process of making?
I can speak to digital fabrication. It's something that I use in my own work a lot. And I have no experience with AI, but for me, it's just another tool. And I teach at the University of North Texas, outside of Dallas, and we have 3D printers and CNC routers and a CNC plasma cutter all within our sculpture facilities, and we teach those tools the same way we would teach a student how to use a drill or how to use the table saw. And we encourage like creative and sort of experimental uses of those tools as well. So that's how I kind of see those, and I think they just afford more possibilities, you know? So I'm excited to see how people use AI in similar ways.
Is that the end? I see people going, no, you did. Okay, I'll do the next one then? Okay. First of all, this writer says, excellent program. I wonder what people think of, and in quotes, indigenous today. Thank you for your work, political awareness. I appreciate the work and ideas involved in making such tangible objects, also the diversity of the presenters, many living in red states. I now know about what the 1680 revolt and what to do with Border Patrol and clothes. So I think the question is, what do people think of as indigenous today? That's the question.
Indigenous would be the natives of the area, ones that didn't come in as immigrants to this country that we so much love. I would say an indigenous would be the Native Americans. They're the original Americans before Europeans, before America, and so that would be more like Virgil's ancestry. My sister next to me, her ancestry, you know, that'd be more of the indigenous people if I was to answer on that.
That's a good question too, because it's all built on stolen land, stolen people. So like that brings us closer together, and I'm glad that our eyes are being opened and we're recognizing each other and talking about it. And art is a perfect way to have that introduction into that that topic.
May I say something? I'm sorry. I believe I'd like to talk about indigeneity from the perspective of process and creating art through a different lens, through a different history, with different wisdom, different knowledge of craft making, art making, which you know, when we think about Native American indigeneity in North America, we can also think about indigeneity from Central America and Mexico. The border crossed all of those lands, and Native indigenous people were colonized on both sides of our borders. And that's important to think about, but with relation to art making, I think it's important that we, like Virgil says, and Carla is bringing attention to the way in which we can use indigenous history, knowledge, and wisdom to ground ourselves in a different way of making that connects us to the land and the knowledge of the land and the respect for the land. So many indigenous communities are working, like Virgil and Carla, in these ways that honor, you know, the land that we thrive on and we live on. And so really paying attention to that as part of an art-making process, I think is very important.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, the next, you go next, Fleur.
I have two comments here that are kind of similar and really kind of engaging with material culture and your relationship to your materials. So this is really asking about this really agency of materials and skilled hands and the wisdom that you're gaining from the materials that you're working with. So if anyone wants to speak about, you know, that relationship to the materials that you're using.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Well, in terms of material culture, I think that since it is, like I mentioned before, kind of an anthropological term, we do have to wonder how we're going to be judged. And I think several artists in this panel also use their material that way, that it has to do with an anthropological view of how we will see or be seen in, you know, many years from now, and they're unearthing this culture that we live in, and how do we feel about that? And as far as the actual making, I think that there's a different relationship to the way we use the material culture, and when we're using prime materials like clay, or in our case glass, and make something completely new, which we always tell students, how do you justify making something new in a world that's already chock full of things? Like, how do you take agency in saying, I have something to say? And that's a tough, high bar, and it should be a high bar. We're a lot of people, and that seems to be the biggest problem with the world, is that we're a lot of people. How are we going to say something about anything meaningful within that sort of parameter?
I guess I can piggyback a little bit about that too. When I started using ceramic, surfaces to paint, and I realized how institution or big organization that categorize work in some ways, and it has been a very problematic for me. Not that I want to create the problem, because I love the material that has its history and cultural reference, and so much meaning to it. And when I was painting, people talk about, is this painting, but you're using paper, as a material. And it's, that hierarchy really confused me. And when I'm painting on the surface of ceramic, people are also, categorizing, oh, this is craft. And we're not really showing craft work in our gallery. And I've heard that, and I laughed really out loud, but I'm painting. This language of painting and mark making just moved from canvas to a paper to a ceramic to a clay surface. Like, how do we put all this hierarchy and categorize all these things? This is people's activity. You know, the people created all this problem. And I think that artists' job is to create wonderful work that are asking lots of questions and, you know, collaborate. And I think that it's the society that, like, at large and in the future, people who are not even born yet, like, you know, they have access to see what we have done, and time will come and they will study more. And for me, the materials speak of our generation and our culture and our system in so many different ways. And I think that in my studio practice, I'm always trying to be true to that, you know, material and how it speaks in our time. And I think that is, for me, a wonderful job. I want to be a more interesting troublemaker rather than just following tradition. And tradition, for me to learn, but adopt and then create something new. And even if it's not new, it's done it a million times, but my perspective somehow reflects what's going on. I think it's a wonderful way for artists to collaborate and think about material that way.
Okay. There's the next questions. I'm going to actually put them together because I think that they're very much related. The first part of that is, in what ways can or do you, as an artist or person, reinforce the social practice of the art itself? In other words, how do you challenge institutions, galleries, present artwork to engage in this work beyond acquiring the work? And then the other part of that is, for those of you who do difficult political work, does the emotional toll of your work ever get to be too much? How do you deal with this? So it's...
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, help me make the questions clear, but I think the first one is, how do we work with social practice in institution relationships, something like that?
In what ways do you reinforce the social justice practice of the art itself?
Yeah. I think one of the things that comes to mind when working with communities in my work is that it's important to establish a kind of network, I think, of support by pairing up collaborative efforts between museums, between universities, between local organizations, between individuals, so that that collective effort can really allow for a project to evolve and be completed to the level that is meant to be completed. Sometimes artists working in community by themselves have a higher risk of, you know, being trumped, if I may say. But when you're committed as a community in a town that's supporting the change that you are working towards, then I think that's important to make sure you have a strong team. I think that's one thing. I think that's good. That's a good answer. We'll let somebody else answer some other part of it.
Okay.
So I had, not the work that I showed you, but I had this experience where the institution where I work, Amherst College, had asked me as an alum and current employee and artist to make an artwork for their bicentennial. And I said, okay, yes, and also no. Because I think what they wanted was a big sculpture on campus, which I had no interest in making at all. And so what I asked the president of the college at the time, as I said, will you partner with me? Like, we're going to make an artwork together. And I know it's a fundraising year, but actually what we're going to do is give away money. Are you in? And she said yes. And so as people collaboratively made these solidarity books, look it up, right? And turned them in for this temporary sculpture, every time they did that, Amherst College banked a certain amount of money, which they then in turn gave away to Black and Indigenous organizations that supported educational opportunities. So I got the institution to think just differently about what art can do and about the legacies of a place that is named Amherst College, named after Lord Jeffrey Amherst, who is on record of saying that killing Indigenous people with smallpox and blankets is a good idea. Like, how are we going to at least address that in this moment of celebrating a bicentennial, you know, on this stolen land? And also address, you know, what had happened in terms of some other issues around Blackness on the campus. And to have someone say, yeah, because how are you going to say no to that? No, 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 no. Like, so sometimes it's asking the institution to do something that they couldn't possibly say no to, right? And to find allies, in this case I had a good ally, but also to find allies where you think you might not find one. So, yeah.
That's good. So this question is talking about Virgil's video, which it did have music. We couldn't play it, but the video where he's showing about the process, there is music normally. And so it's really sort of asking about what type of music do you all listen to? So when you are, you know, so please let us know, like.
Let the dance party begin.
Yeah, so this is a playlist, so please give us what is this present moment playlist.
Who's going to see Depeche Mode this summer? You know, like the Depeche Mode, Prince, Sade are my favorite ones, Red Hot Chili Peppers, but always electronic music as well.
You want everybody to answer that? No, to us it's totally all over the place, from cumbia to classical. It's really everything.
Lots of African music too.
Should I supposed to say K-pop? I don't know. Hey, I'm listening to BTS.
Yeah, my playlist is all over the place, also from pop to whatever, but I would say like one artist I would put on a playlist is Brian Eno, specifically like not his ambient stuff, which I love, but older like albums like Another Green World. Yeah.
I guess I am also very eclectic with my music selection. I try to listen to music that's not going to interrupt too much my thinking when I'm working, so more instrumental music in the studio, but when I'm getting excited and letting loose and in the shower maybe, I sing and I play music from my youth, you know, Mexican music from the 80s and I have two wonderful sons that play instruments every day, so I listen to piano every day in my house. Yeah.
I drove up here with my husband and my two sons are older, and from Kahnawake to Washington, we're talking about maybe a 9-hour drive. So we had to listen to something. Well, toward the end of the trip, one of my sons says, "Oh my God, I can't listen to one more of this NPR radio." I listen to NPR.
Well, I'm sure y'all can figure out what I listen to. I'm an 80s baby. So I listen to a lot of 90s and early 2000s hip hop.
I'm really eclectic as well. I'm married to a jazz musician, so I think the right answer is to say Daryl Harper. And he, for many years, toured with Regina Carter, so Regina Carter and Jason Moran, who he's touring with now. Those are all people who are very, very close to my heart, but the person who was in there all the time is Nina Simone, like all the time. Even when you asked the question, I started playing some Nina Simone, which I will not sing for you. But you should have it in your hearts too, so.
I do love this question. I love music. Just this summer, I set up a record player with big speakers in my studio, which is quite small, and have been putting records on the turntable. And records from my old collection, like from high school, you know. So I think the first one I played was The Cramps, which was so good, like to hear it on vinyl, you know. But just recently I realized that words, there's so many words in the world coming into my ears, and I needed to stop listening to words. And so in the studio I've been listening to, I started with How We Be, Music for Babies, one of my all-time favorite CDs, and just hearing sound was really transformative for me. Like it changed the way that I focus in the studio, like something became quiet and I could think differently. So right now it has to be no words, really. I know words will come back, but not right now.
Okay. Is that it? Do we have any other questions? How's our time? Timekeepers? We're good? Okay. I can't see that. Sorry. Okay, 5 minutes. Anyone inspired with a question before we leave? Or anyone inspired with a comment? Please.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in because I wanted to comment on that question about how does our work, I can't remember the exact words, but how does our work do something and challenge institutions?
How do you challenge institutions, galleries, and present the art world, or present to the art world to engage in this work beyond acquiring the work? In other words, the art establishment, I guess, you know, how do we challenge folks in the art establishment to engage in the work beyond acquiring it?
Yeah, I actually was thinking about the Renwick, truthfully. I was thinking about a conversation I had with Mary. I was so honored when the piece went into the collection, but I was also really surprised because it's made out of trash that's off-gassing. And it's trash that will break down, it'll crumble, it'll become brittle, it's oxidizing, it's changing, just as we are, right? I'm getting wrinkles as I tell you this. You know, and when I saw the piece yesterday, I was like, oh my gosh, look at that, it's turning brown, it has an ochre patina on it in some spots, and I'm waiting for that debris to just dust that plinth, right? And to me, that was such an achievement that this material is allowed to be in a space and publicly disintegrate as an object that we need to look at, right? Like it felt like it's allowed to serve its purpose. And then this part with Mary that I have to share. Mary told me that the plastics conservator analyzed the work, which was so fascinating to me to hear about, and that this work, these plastics are no longer off-gassing, so they're stable, but that they will be around for 2,000 years. So even if it was allowed to just sit on that plinth for 2,000 years, I wish I could come back and see it. You know, that it will be something else. It'll be a pile of steel. You know, it'll be a bracelet of descending concentric circles that are woven together in steel with dust around it. You know, that's how I see it in the future. That would be its service, you know.
I'd like to speak on the topic as well, Susan. For my skill set being grass and me turning my grass into art, I feel like I don't challenge the institution, I challenge myself. And the reason why I challenge myself is because as I've been blessed to have my artwork in such large establishments, it also keeps the conversation alive about my culture. So the reason why I push myself to make the artwork more over the top and more over the top and more over the top, because you got to remember, it's made of grass that I've harvested from the saltwater marsh. I laid it to sun dry, and then I put hours, weeks, and then months into it to keep that conversation about the native people of the Gullah heritage alive. And so I don't challenge the institution, I challenge myself to make every piece a wow factor for me.
Can I just say I'll say something when you're done.
My comment about sort of engaging in the institution in like more challenging conversations, for me it's about like so much of my work is made in collaboration, as I said, you know, working with artisans like neon vendors and other people to bring my ideas to life. So often we still have this idea that an artwork was made by one person and that person is like some kind of genius. And we put artists up on this pedestal in ways that are actually totally untrue. And oftentimes as artists, like if I'm submitting my work to an opportunity, there's not an opportunity for me to actually give credit to all of the people I feel like I need to give credit to. And so I was really grateful when Mary and Nora like allowed me to do that on the title card on the wall. And, you know, my neon vendor, Amy, is so excited. Like, she's like, when you're there this weekend, can you take a picture of my name on the wall? And the fact that she will always kind of, like, her name will also kind of be on record as being a part of the work is, I think, like, an achievement I'm really proud of. Because, like, especially within music and film, that already exists. Like those credits are long at the end of movies for good reason, right? And we should be able to do that in fine art as well.
And I'll just very quickly add a comment. I know I partially answered before, but I just wanted to say that beyond, you know, museums and institutions and local organizations pairing up to collaborate, also is the collection of artworks that was mentioned in the question. I think institutions and museums have a true responsibility to identify what is an inclusive programming, what that really means. And that may be collector, you know, working with collectors, having conversations about what it means to support the institution in the ways that it can be done. But also to think about the, you know, in particular the work I'm presenting here, for example, the Space in Between project, that is not just an act of, I want to say this lightly, but an act of objectification of a subject matter, of an issue, of a history, but that we're actually opening up these platforms in museum settings to allow for problem solving to take place, for issues to arise, and for us as a community to find solutions to these problems, and for museums to be part of that programming afterwards into the future, thinking in more sustainable ways.
Thank you all so much for your time today and your wonderful presentations and answers, and Anya and Diana for moderating. And thank you all for joining us. Let's please give them a wonderful round of applause. And I invite all of you to join us out in the lobby for a reception, and we can continue the conversation there.